The room was a mess, but that was the least of Kylie Thompson's worries. She lay on a small bed, her body a testament to the car crash that had left her with a severe disability. Across the room, on the couch, Craig Fraley, her childhood friend turned fiancé, and Melanie Lampard, the girl who'd always played Kylie's part in her parents' home, were wrapped up in each other, completely lost in their own world. They were so into their moment, it was like Kylie didn't even exist. "I never really liked her," Craig murmured, his words barely audible over Melanie's soft laughter. "She was always the one chasing after me. Melanie, I've had a thing for you since college. You always make me crazy." Melanie's giggle was light, her voice carrying a teasing edge. Should we get someone to help her out? She must be feeling pretty miserable. Craig just snorted. Who could feel anything for her now? No one. Kylie, staring at them, wanted to shout, to call them out for their shamelessness, but her voice was gone, stolen by the long days of hunger and neglect. Ever since her accident, she'd been left alone, her body now a map of painful sores, the room filled with the stench of her suffering. She glanced down at her arm, the countless puncture marks a stark reminder of the blood she'd given to Melanie. But look at all this was the thanks she got. "Kylie, you were never meant to be here," Melanie said, her lips still close to Craig's. "Your existence is a constant reminder of my real family. But even as your parents' real daughter, they don't treat you like family. They just use you as a blood bank for me." With a sound kiss on Craig's lips, she smiled. "And look, your fiancé. He's mine now." Craig held Melanie close, his eyes filled with desire, as he added, "She's lucky to serve as your blood bank. Otherwise, who knows if she'd have made it this far." "You're right," Melanie agreed. "Now that I'm better, we don't need her anymore." "Oh right, we've left her to starve for days, but she's still here. After we give her another dose of that medicine, she won't last much longer," Craig said, his movements becoming more urgent. Tears streamed down Kylie's face, her body thin and frail. She was consumed by a deep resentment. The pain from the excessive medication was unbearable, but she was too weak to react. Her life was slipping away, filled with regret and injustice. "Kylie, just hang in there and give us a bit more blood, will ya? It's not like it's going to hurt you any. If something happens to Mel, how are you going to sleep at night?" Julie Lampard, Kylie's biological mother, said, her voice cold. "Totally, we've got you back with us now. You've already taken what was Mel's. She's been the one keeping us company all these years while you were elsewhere. So now, when we're asking for a little more from you for Mel, don't be such a wimp." Samuel, her father, barked. The couple, their expressions a match in disapproval, looked down at Kylie, who was quiet with her head hung low. Their words were a steady stream of criticism aimed at her. They cradled Melanie in their arms, treating her with the kind of care they'd give to a precious, fragile thing, while Kylie might as well have been invisible. Melanie, her face pale and delicate, spoke up in a voice as soft as a summer breeze, trying to ease the tension. "Mom, Dad, I can manage. Don't push Kylie. If she's not happy with me, it's probably because I haven't done enough." Samuel and Julie's faces softened with concern. They turned back to Kylie, their voices filled with reproach. "You're as healthy as a horse. Can't you show a little heart for Mel?" Then they turned to the nurse. "Miss, no need to wait for H. With the blood draw." Approval. "We're her parents, we've got the say. Just keep going." Kylie shot up from her seat, a sarcastic laugh escaping her lips as she looked at her parents. It was just now that the truth hit her. She had been given a fresh start. The memories of the last moments were a blur of agony, and the pain was so real. In her previous life, once she was welcomed back into the family, Kylie had been on her best behavior, always trying to please them. Kylie and Melanie had the same rare blood type, and that was how they got switched up as babies, by the way. Her parents would hit her up for blood donations now and then. Kylie never turned them down, always trying to keep them happy and avoid further accusations. And every time she gave in, she felt like she was just not doing enough, even though it left her feeling weak and getting sick more often. And Melanie was the golden child in front of their parents, making Kylie look like the bad guy who always picked on her. "Kylie, what's with the spaced out look? You're always acting all country bumpkin. Come on. It's freaking Mel out," Julie snapped, her voice sharp. Samuel added his own stern tone to the mix. "Kylie, this is disappointing. You're really out of bounds. If you want something, just spit it out. No need to cause a scene in the hospital." Melanie moved closer, her voice dripping with fake sweetness, as she held Kylie's hand. "Kylie, how about I give you the Ferrari Dad got me for my birthday? I really need your help. I promise I'll share all my cool stuff with you. Please don't be mad." Julie's anger was palpable as she was about to slap Kylie. "Don't be silly, honey, Kylie can't drive. What would she do with a car? Kylie, you're being way too greedy. You've already taken our attention, and now you're after Melanie's car too. A smug gleam flickered in Melanie's eyes. No matter what, Kylie's no match for my charm. I'm always the beloved one in front of mom and dad. Kylie's eyes were as cold and unblinking as a winter's night as she stared at Julie. Julie paused, a shiver running down her spine from Kylie's icy gaze. What are you trying to pull, Kylie? Sit down and stop causing a scene. Samuel barked, his patience clearly worn thin. Kylie's face was a mask of indifference as she asked, will she die without my blood? Melanie took a step back, her voice trembling with feigned shock. No, Kylie, you don't want me to die, do you? Julie's anger was reaching its peak. How can you be so cruel? You'd actually want Melanie to die. I can't believe I'm your mother. You're such a disappointment, Kylie. I really regret bringing you back into our lives. Julie was utterly ashamed of Kylie. She's such an embarrassment, always causing trouble and never obeying. Is it too much to ask for a little cooperation? She thought. Kylie, please don't upset mom. She's not feeling well. Blame this on me, Melanie said, her voice shaky as tears streamed down her cheeks. Samuel's expression hardened, and he turned to Kylie with that familiar sternness. Kylie, apologize to your mom and Melanie. Now. In the past, whenever they teamed up against her and Samuel asked for her apologies, she'd always back down. But even after she said sorry, it never seemed to be enough. They'd always complain that she was pretending to be weak, especially during those blood draws. Kylie glanced at the marks on her arm, her voice icy. You're the ones who should apologize. But even if you did, I wouldn't accept it. We have a lot to settle, and I'll do it on my terms. With that, she turned and walked out of the hospital, determination in her stride. As she stepped outside, a sharp pain hit her, but she looked down at her legs, her eyes glistening. It felt amazing to be able to stand and walk again. She'd deal with her family later. Right now, there was something far more urgent she needed to do. Kylie, don't you dare leave. Julie's voice echoed with disbelief as Kylie unnaturally walked out without a word, her pulse visibly throbbing. Samuel, look at her. What are we gonna do? Julie's eyes were fiery with frustration, searching for an answer in Samuel's calm demeanor. Samuel's gaze followed Kylie's exit, his face a mask of determination. She's got no money, nowhere to run. She'll be back, begging for forgiveness, and then we'll get her to the hospital like we planned. Julie huffed, her anger not subsiding. She's being way too stubborn. Even if she does come back, we can't just let it got to stand our ground. Melanie, with a hint of joy in her eyes, tried to ease the tension. Mom, don't stress. Kylie might just surprise us and come home tonight. Melanie smiled to herself. Well, no matter the fuss Kylie's making, she's gonna beg me and sacrifice for me. She'll know I'm the real center of attention in the family, no matter who the biological daughter is. I have the family's love and support, always. Kylie stepped out of the hospital, her fingers shaking as she found her phone and dialed a number from her contacts. She had to make this call and set things right. Mrs. Walters, I'm in. I'll do it. I'll marry your grandson, she said, her voice a whisper of a decision just made. She could picture Noreen's smile through the phone, a warm nod of approval that eased Kylie's racing heart. After hanging up, Kylie was hit with a flood of memories from her previous life. Her adopted dad died when she was 3, and her adopted mother Amanda had moved to the country and worked so hard to raise her and her 3 brothers. Felicia Zimmerman, Amanda's neighbor back in the country, had been nice to her. The simplicity of life there had been a stark contrast to the chaos of the city, and Kylie had thrived on the quiet lessons Felicia had taught her. When she went off to college, leaving the countryside behind, Felicia hadn't been far behind. She'd brought Noreen Walters, her old friend, along one visit, and from that day on, Kylie and Noreen had kept in close touch. Then came the day when Noreen showed up with her grandson Trevor Walters, not just for a meal but with a marriage proposal on the table. Trevor, with his tailored suits and cool gaze, had been everything Kylie wasn't looking for. But he was willing to do whatever it took to make Noreen happy, and Kylie had been too wrapped up in her relationship with Craig to even consider it. She'd said no, and Noreen looked upset. The next day, Trevor called with news that Noreen was seriously ill, with only 3 years to live, that their marriage was her last wish. He'd promised to meet any condition Kylie set, but she'd held firm in her refusal. Kylie's world turned upside down after the car crash that needed some heavy medical bills to fix. Samuel and Julie didn't think she was worth the investment, figuring she'd be a hassle if she lost a limb. But Noreen, after hearing Kylie's story, not only paid for the surgery but also took care of her recovery. It was only later that Kylie learned about her family's lies. The tears, the promises, the manipulations. Noreen had been duped into believing that Samuel and Melanie would take care of Kylie, and in her kindness, she'd even had Trevor help Samuel's business. For a brief time after Kylie's death, her spirit stayed, and she saw Noreen's tears as she held her lifeless body. Now, with a second chance, Kylie was determined to make things right and to repay the kindness that Noreen had shown her. But she'd already rejected Trevor once yesterday. She could only hope he'd be willing to hear her out again. Kylie slipped her phone into her bag and hustled to the bus stop. Just as she got there, her phone buzzed with an urgent call. She answered, and Trevor's voice came through, cool and detached. "Ms. Lampard, you turned me down yesterday, and now you're having second thoughts. What's the deal?" Kylie's eyes drifted to the bus schedule. "I've reconsidered, Mr. Walters. Your proposal isn't so bad after all." There was a brief pause, then Trevor's voice returned, still as distant as before. "Meet me at City Hall at 3:30 p.m. Back at the Walters group, Trevor ended the call and nodded for his assistant Zack to continue. Ms. Lampard was welcomed back by the Lampard family 6 months ago. She was raised in a small town with her adoptive parents and met her boyfriend, Craig, in high school. They've been together ever since, even through college at separate schools. I'm still digging for more." Zack summarized what he'd found on Kylie. On Trevor's desk were a few photos of Kylie. In one, she was hugging a cheerful, good-looking guy, both smiling at the camera. Their youthful energy was clear, but it didn't detract from Kylie's striking features. Also, for the past 6 months, Ms. Lampard has been donating blood to the Lampard family's adopted daughter, Zack added. Trevor checked his watch, confirming the time. "Get a 3-year secret marriage contract ready." Zack looked surprised. Is Mr. Walters really planning to get married? To Kylie, who already has a fiancé. Isn't he worried about her motives? Kylie arrived at City Hall at 2:55 p.m. With a few minutes to spare, her heart pounding in her chest. Kylie's bag contained the documents she needed, which were supposed to be used to reconnect with the Lampard family legacy after today's blood donation. But things had changed. She wasn't going to be a part of their world anymore. Her eyes held a fierce glint, a sign of the resolve that burned within her. Soon, Trevor showed up, his presence as cool and collected as ever. Their eyes locked, and Kylie could see the questions lurking behind his gaze. She didn't flinch. If she were in his shoes, she'd be just as curious. "Before we go any further, there's something you need to sign," Trevor said, all business. He slid some paper across to her. Kylie gave them a quick once-over. The terms were straightforward: a marriage in name only, a secret to everyone but Noreen, and a divorce on the horizon in 3 years' time. "TM good with the terms," Kylie said, reaching for the pen. "We go our separate ways after 3 years, no fuss." Trevor stopped her, his hand on hers. "This is a big step. No take-backs once it's done." Kylie met his eyes, her decision made. "I'm sure." "All right, hit me with your condition," Trevor prompted. Kylie was about to say she didn't have any, but she stopped herself, considering the weight of his question. Kylie took a moment and then spoke up. "I know Mrs. Noreen Walters has had you help out the Lampard family." Trevor's brow lifted slightly as he thought, is she trying to say the Lampard family needs more power? With Samuel's skills, they're as high as they can climb. But if she's using this as leverage, it's okay to play ball. "T'd like you to cut the Lampard family loose, Mr. Walters," Kylie murmured, her eyes downcast, trying to hide the fierce determination in them. Trevor was surprised, but he didn't push for more. After Kylie signed on the dotted line, Trevor glanced at his watch. "Let's get in." "Sure," Kylie responded, her voice firm and unwavering. The city hall was a rare sight, dead quiet. "We got our marriage certificate in a flash." Kylie stood outside, gawking at the certificate like it was a magic trick. She was still in a daze when Trevor piped up, "Let's connect on the WhatsApp. I'll send you my address. You can move in soon." He didn't stick around for her reply, just added her and split. Kylie had pictured living with Noreen, not shacking up with Trevor. But this could be a good thing. Pretending to be a happy couple might ease Noreen's mind. She checked her watch, 3:30 p.m. Time to head over to the Lampard residence and grab her stuff. If it weren't for the special gifts from Felicia, she'd never go back there. On the subway, her phone buzzed. Kylie answered without looking. "Hello." "Hey, honey." Craig's voice came through. "Melanie just told me you had a big scene at the hospital when you donated blood. I don't think that was the best idea, Kylie. It's gonna hurt your parents, and Melanie needs you. Just leaving like that, it's pretty messed up. Where are you now?" "I'll come get you, and we can go make amends with your folks tomorrow. We'll go to the hospital and donate blood, and then maybe we can catch a movie." His soothing words flowed, but Kylie's grip on her phone tightened. Kylie's love story with Craig was a classic tale of high school sweethearts that carried on through college. But when Craig proposed on graduation day, swearing his love was eternal, life had other plans. The betrayal that followed, the year of paralysis before her end, those memories were as fresh as if they happened yesterday, etched in her heart with a pain that was impossible to forget. "Kylie, you there?" Craig's voice came through the phone, a tinge of annoyance in his tone. "The call's getting spotty. Want Met to text you." "Screw you, Craig. We're so over." Kylie shot back, her voice as sharp as a knife. The thought of being with him now made her sick. She ended the call without another word. Her phone lit up with messages, but she didn't even bother to check. Blocking him wasn't on her to-do list. She had better things to do with her life. Kylie soon stepped into the Lampard residence, her heart not quite in it. The traffic outside meant the Lampard family were probably still stuck, giving her a bit of a breather. Her stuff was minimal, just enough to fill a suitcase, which was all she needed after her half-year stay. As she headed downstairs, she spotted an ancient painting, the one she'd spent 3 months restoring. It was a birthday gift for Julie, but it ended up in the most out-of-the-way spot in the living room. Julie had given it the cold shoulder, more into the fancy bag Melanie had handed over. Kylie's effort and feelings apparently didn't make the cut. She reached for the painting, her fingers tracing the canvas before she carefully took it down. With a flick of her wrist, the painting was nestled in her suitcase. In 40 minutes, Samuel, Julie, and Melanie walked back into the house. Julie glanced around and then frowned at Jill. "Has Kylie shown up yet?" Jill, the housekeeper, paused her dusting. "Yes, ma'am. She came back with a suitcase about half an hour ago, but then she left again." "With a suitcase?" Julie's voice hitched up. Jill nodded. "That's right, Mrs. Lampard." Melanie's eyes widened in surprise. She'd been looking forward to seeing Kylie return, ready to make amends. But where was the resolution Craig had assured her of? "Is she running away?" Melanie asked, her voice tinged with disbelief. Samuel's face flushed with anger. "If she's got the guts to walk out, she can stay out. She's too immature for her own good. I'm cutting off her credit cards right now. I'm gonna take a look in her room. She's probably just pulling a stunt, trying to make a point by leaving. I'll bet she's got her eye on a car or something. She's being so childish." Julie's brow was pinched in frustration. Then she hurried upstairs to Kylie's room, a place she rarely visited. When she opened the door, the emptiness and the bare-bones decor gave her a moment's pause, a strange feeling she couldn't put her finger on. Melanie joined her, noticing Julie's distant look. She knew she had to keep her place in the family. She was the treasured daughter, the one who had everything. Kylie was the outsider, the one who didn't quite fit in. "Mom, maybe I should go. If I leave, maybe Kylie will come back," Melanie suggested, her voice soft. Julie shook her head, her gaze softening as she looked at Melanie. "She'd be better off if she were more like you. Just leave her be. We don't need to worry about her." Melanie continued, her voice gentle. "Kylie's had a different upbringing. Her adoptive mom didn't have much education. It's not surprising she's a bit lost. We can guide her, Mom. She'll learn to be as thoughtful and caring as I am towards you and Dad." Julie's frustration was evident. She's been to college, she should be more sensible. She's just narrow-minded and unappreciative. She let out a sigh. "Let's go have dinner. Kylie can sort herself out." In the heart of the city, the streets were a symphony of honking horns and the rhythmic shuffle of footsteps. Kylie, tucked into the back of a cab, was soaking in the view with a mix of awe and disbelief. It all seemed so surreal, but there she was, very much present. The cabbie, a seasoned man with a weathered face, cast a glance over his shoulder. Kylie was a looker, early 20s maybe, but there was a depth of sorrow in her eyes that made him think something was amiss. Her phone had been going off like a broken record since she got in. "You getting a lot of calls there?" he said, more a statement than a question. "Just some spam." Kylie shrugged it off, her eyes flicking back to her phone. It was Craig again. The calls and texts were coming in like clockwork. She could almost visualize his face, red with anger, and that image was tainted with a memory she'd rather not dwell on. Her fingers tightened around her phone, the ringing abruptly silenced. Then, another call came through. Trevor's name lit up the screen, and her breath hitched in her chest. Kylie answered the phone. "Hey, Mr. Walters. Grandma's got her eye on you for tonight. You up for it?" Trevor's voice was as chill as the evening breeze. "Actually, I'm already at Starlit Villa," Kylie said, her tone light. "I'm pretty pumped to see her." She'd tied the knot with Trevor for the sake of Noreen, and if Noreen wanted to see her, Kylie was all in, no matter what. There was a brief pause, filled only with the hum of the phone line. Then Trevor's voice came back. "Cool, just hang tight at home for about 30 minutes. Zack's on his way to pick you up." "Sounds good, thanks," Kylie said before tapping the phone to end the call. She walked into the villa, her phone displaying the door lock codes Trevor had sent. It was smooth sailing from there. As she slipped on her slippers, a shrill ringtone sliced through the villa's quiet. Kylie glanced at her phone. Julie was calling. A wry smile played on Kylie's lips as she hit the decline button. She had a night with Noreen to look forward to, and she wasn't about to let anyone rain on her parade. Julie's face fell as she glanced at her phone's screen, a rejected call notification sitting prominently. "Honey," Kylie blew off my call, she huffed, her tone carrying a hint of frustration. Samuel, typically the picture of composure, couldn't mask his annoyance. "What did you say to her?" "Let it go. She's been out of school for 3 months now, with no job and no income. Don't send her any money. We'll see how long she can hold out." "You've got a point," Julie conceded, her thoughts turning to Melanie. "She wasn't raised under our roof, so we're not as close. Mel's the one who's always got her head on straight." Samuel's jaw set firm. "I've already frozen her card. She'll be back before we know it." Julie's eyes hardened with a mix of anger and determination. "And when she does, I'm going to give her a piece of my mind about how to conduct herself." The Walters residence stood quietly in the night as a Maybach pulled up to the entrance. Kylie stepped out, glancing back at Zack. "Thanks," she said, her tone casual. Zack raised an eyebrow, surprised. The whole ride from Starlit Villa, Kylie hadn't asked about Trevor, which seemed off considering they'd just gotten hitched that afternoon. Zack knew the score. In Jardora, a bevy of women coveted the Walters' golden ring. Kylie, in his book, had played the game and won, charming her way into the family's good graces. The others just didn't have her magic touch. As Kylie moved to follow the butler into the house, Zack's curiosity piqued. Just as he was about to make his exit, she called out, "Zack, hold up." He turned, expecting the inevitable question about her new hubby. Instead, she zeroed in on the pearl pendant around his neck. "Is that a family heirloom or a gift?" she asked, her curiosity piqued. Zack hesitated, glancing down at the pendant. "It's a gift. I really like it. The person who gave it to me said it's from ancient times." Kylie's smile was faint, and her eyes held a hint of something more as she looked at the pendant. It had a clean, minimalist design, but there was a small, discolored spot on it that looked like a drop of dried blood. She knew she had to repay Noreen's kindness, and with her recent marriage to Trevor, she couldn't let anything jeopardize that. She couldn't just stand by and watch Trevor be affected by Zack. "The pendant is definitely from an earlier era," Kylie said, nodding. "But it might not be a good luck charm." "How so?" "I've always been drawn to it." "You know about antiques?" Zack asked, his thumb absent-mindedly rubbing the smooth surface of the pearl. "I know enough," Kylie said, her gaze still on the pendant. Zack smiled. "The person who gave it to me said it was designed by a famous artist. It's supposed to be a collector's item." Kylie leaned in slightly. "To be honest, I think this pendant might have been taken from someone who passed away. It could bring trouble to you and those close to you. You've only been wearing it for a few days, right?" Kylie didn't plan to hold back after all. Noreen, who was in poor health, could be one of those close to Zack. Zack's eyes widened. "Taken from someone who passed away. How can you tell?" He was now very aware of the pendant, his thumb rubbing over the spot that Kylie had noticed. "Is she just trying to freak me out? For that I didn't say anything about Mr. Walters. Or is there something to her words?" Kylie glanced at her watch. "I've got a meeting with Mrs. Walters, so let's make it quick. If you want my advice, take it off and give it back. If not, you might want to keep your distance from Mrs. Walters for a bit." She then made her way inside, leaving Zack to consider her words. She'd said her piece and made sure Noreen would be safe. Now it was on him to decide. A month would tell if her warning had been heeded or not. Zack stood there for a moment, the pendant suddenly feeling like a burden around his neck. Noreen greeted Kylie with a watery smile inside the house. "Kylie, darling, I was up all night after you said no yesterday, but I'm so glad you've come around. Let's see that marriage certificate," Noreen said, her eyes still glistening. "I'm really sorry, Mrs. Walters," Kylie said, her heart aching at the sight of Noreen's tears. "None of that now. Your family, honey, just call me by my name," Noreen said, brushing away her tears. Her emotions were raw, a sign of her age. "Okay, here you are, Noreen." Kylie handed over the marriage certificate, and Noreen's face lit up as she looked at the photo. "This is just perfect," Noreen gushed, her smile stretching from ear to ear. "Kylie, you'll see, Trevor is a great guy, someone you can really rely on. You've made a wonderful choice." Kylie nodded, agreeing with Noreen's assessment. She'd only met Trevor a couple of times, but she could already tell he was a stand-up guy. His dedication to his grandmother was a testament to his character. "And Kylie," Noreen added, picking up an envelope from the side table, "Felicia left this letter with me. She said if you got married within a year, I should give it to you. If not, we'd just forget about it." Now that you and Trevor are hitched, it's time for you to read it. Kylie's curiosity was piqued at the mention of Felicia. Have you heard from Felicia? Noreen shook her head, a hint of sadness in her eyes. If Felicia doesn't want to be found, she won't be. She called me when she left a year ago, telling me not to worry about her. Kylie felt a twinge of sadness, thinking about how she hadn't listened to Felicia's advice in her previous life. The memory still weighed on her heart. Growing up, Kylie had a strict rule from Felicia. The skills she learned from Felicia were for keeps, not for cash, at least not until she was married. That included the stuff she picked up from the books at Felicia's all off limits for making money. And if she ever blabbed about their secret studies to anyone, including her adoptive mom, Amanda, Felicia warned, it could bring nothing but trouble. In a past that didn't go down well, Craig's mom Jasmine needed a kidney transplant, which was going to hit them with a huge bill of about $300,000. Kylie couldn't handle seeing Craig so stressed, so she did a behind-the-scenes art restoration job at the price of $300,000. A couple of days after that, while shopping with Julie, a truck went rogue and headed straight for them. Kylie didn't think twice, she pushed Julie out of the way. That was when her life took a sharp turn. She ended up paralyzed from the chest down. But in this life, those events were just bad memories that hadn't happened yet. In her last life, Kylie never got to see Felicia again before she passed. Holding Felicia's letter now, with its familiar handwriting, was too much. Kylie couldn't hold back the tears, they just fell, splashing onto the letter. The letter revealed that Felicia had one last chance to divine the future, and she'd bequeathed it to Kylie. The reading was stark, a looming crisis that could have been fatal, or at the very least, it hinted that Kylie might not surpass 3 more years. But since Kylie was reading the letter, it meant that she had avoided the catastrophe Felicia had foreseen. Her future was no longer limited, she was now free to explore whatever path she chose. Felicia's letter ended with a gentle note that they'd meet again if fate allowed, but not to force it. Kylie remembered that she had wanted to learn how to read fortunes from Felicia when she was young, but Felicia always said it was better not to look too far into the future. Although Kylie hadn't inherited Felicia's ability to predict life's twists and turns, she had a sixth sense of the vibes of ancient artifacts. And that was where she'd put her energy, diving deep into those ancient tomes of Felicia's. "Oh honey, what's up? Why are you crying?" Noreen's heartstrings tugged. She'd never been one to cry easily, but seeing her this way was plain upsetting. "I'm good, Noreen," Kylie sniffled, a smile breaking through her tears. "Just missing Felicia something fierce." With Kylie momentarily out for the restroom, it hit Noreen, and she seized the chance to call Trevor. "You didn't upset Kylie at the city hall, did you?" Trevor, just packing up after a marathon day at Walter's group, was taken aback by the call. "Grandma. What did she say about me? Why would you think that?" "Kylie's quiet, but I can read between the lines," Noreen said pointedly. "I know when something's eating at her. I didn't do a thing." Trevor defended himself, his hand massaging his temple as he headed for the elevator. Trevor's mind raced. A fleeting glint of suspicion crossed his eyes. "What's Kylie after, exactly? I thought she'd stick to the terms of the agreement since we've signed the contract, but now it seems she has other plans." "See that you didn't," Noreen admonished. "And you're coming to get her tonight. Don't forget what I told you, make me a great grandma soon." Trevor just rolled his eyes, the familiar burden of his grandmother's expectations settling on his shoulders. The elevator doors closed, leaving just him and Zack inside. Zack had been off in his own world ever since they'd returned from the Walters residence. Trevor couldn't help but notice. "What's with you?" he asked, a hint of concern in his voice. Zack's face twisted into a grimace as he fingered the pearl pendant around his neck. "I can't get what Kylie said out of my head. She made it seem like this thing is, I don't know, haunted or something. It's just an old piece, right? It can't be cursed." Trevor's brow arched, his expression cooling as he thought Kylie might be a fraud. "Don't let her get to you," he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. Zack nodded, the weight of worry lifting. "Sure, sir." Then Zack thought with a sigh of relief, he's the boss. If he says it's nothing, I believe him. Good news, anyway. This pendant is a family treasure, meant to be passed down for generations. The elevator was dropping like a rock, but then it hit a rough patch around the 20-something floors. The lights danced around before they steadied up again. They brushed it off as a little hiccup, but then the thing started to plummet, way faster than it should have been. Even Trevor, who was usually as chill as they come, looked a bit rattled. "Dude," Zack cried to himself, his eyes bulging, "not the way I saw my day going down, right?" The elevator plunged into darkness. Zack's voice echoed, a mix of panic and disbelief. "Mr. Walters, hold it together," Trevor commanded, his voice steady despite the situation. Just when they braced for the worst, the elevator screeched to a stop. The lights flickered back on, casting a surreal glow over The scene. Zack, now huddled in a corner, looked up at Trevor, who stood unscathed, his gaze sharper than the situation warranted. Zack then took the pearl pendant down and glanced at it, a strange sense of unease settling in. "This is off," he muttered, pulling it off to examine it closer. "Ms. Lampard wasn't just yanking my chain, was she?" Trevor, not one to entertain such notions, looked to the ceiling. "Get the engineering team on this. They need to check every elevator and make sure we're not having a repeat performance tomorrow." "Sure," Zack replied, his voice still shaky. Exiting the elevator, Zack, not quite back to his usual self, asked, "Mr. Walters, could you check with Ms. Lampard? I mean, about this pendant. Should I still be wearing it?" Trevor glanced at the pendant, its quality undeniable. "Keep it. It was just a glitch." He dismissed Zack's words with a wave of his hand. Zack nodded, determination in his eyes. "I'll get on the fix." His mind raced. It seems like the engineering team has their work cut out for them. They've given Mr. Walters a heart-stopping ride. Time for them to earn their keep and ensure every elevator was in perfect shape for the next day. Trevor strolled into the Walters residence, surprised to see his grandma, who usually wasn't too thrilled with him, all smiles with Kylie as they watched some reality dating show. Noreen had a new favorite pastime, reality TV. The more scripted and dramatic, the better. Kylie was right there with her, chatting away about the show's couples. He stood there for a bit, unnoticed. They were too wrapped up in the show to notice him. Noreen was the first to spot him. "Hey, when do you sneak in here? You're like a ghost," she joked, raising an eyebrow. Kylie's smile disappeared the moment she saw Trevor. She gave him a quick, polite nod. "Just got here," Trevor said. He couldn't help but notice how quickly Kylie's mood changed when he showed up, compared to the warm smile she'd shared with his grandma. It was like she had a switch, but he couldn't figure out what had triggered it. "You just got married to Kylie today, and you're still working late. Your company's got a whole team, and they can't cover for you. Maybe it's time to shake things up with the staff," Noreen chided, rolling her eyes at Trevor. "Get back to Starlit Villa with Kylie and take care of her, all right." Noreen pondered the transformation of her grandson. Once a charming boy, Trevor had grown into a man who seemed to have left his sweetness behind. Kylie, however, shared Noreen's love for those romantic reality shows, and their bonding over them was a joy to behold. Trevor just hummed in response, not offering any further explanation. Noreen shot him a stern look. "You're so lucky to marry Kylie. Don't take it for granted." Trevor frowned, wondering how Kylie had made her way to win over Noreen. Kylie glanced over, a touch of worry in her eyes. "Noreen, I've got your bath set with some relaxing salts. Make sure to take a dip before you turn in." Noreen's head bobbed up and down like a buoy on the waves. "You bet, Kylie. Your wish is my tub this minute." Trevor, standing by, just gave a nonchalant shrug, his expression unreadable. "Command. I'm diving into that." Pulling up to the Starlit Villa, Trevor and Kylie cruised through the empty streets and made it there in half the time. Inside, the silence between them was only broken by the sound of the front door closing. Trevor's eyes landed on a suitcase by the door, looking tiny enough to be a kid's, with a painting sitting on top, giving off a vintage vibe. "Second floor's all yours. Take any room but mine," Trevor said, kicking off his shoes and slipping into slippers. He'd heard about her recent moves from Zack, and he wasn't sure what to make of them. It seemed like she was playing a game, and he wasn't interested in being a pawn. Kylie got the message loud and clear. They were married on paper, but that was about it. Trevor had made it clear he wasn't interested in getting cozy. She nodded, stepping into a pair of slippers and dragging her suitcase upstairs. Trevor trailed behind, stopping to indicate one of the doors. "That's my room." "Okay." Kylie took a look around and chose a room that wasn't right next to his. She wasn't trying to get too close for comfort. It was better to keep some space between them, to avoid any awkwardness. After all, she had her own plans, and getting tangled up with Trevor wasn't part of them. Trevor raised an eyebrow at her distant demeanor. "Night, Mr. Walters," Kylie said, her voice echoing down the hallway before her bedroom door clicked shut. Alone, Trevor frowned, realizing he'd been thinking about her more than he should. As long as she kept his grandma smiling, that was all that counted. The rest, not his problem. After an hour of unpacking and a much-needed shower, Kylie finally dropped onto the bed, her body aching, her mind spinning. The day had been a blur, waking up to the shock of a new existence, rushing into marriage with Trevor, and now, getting to see Noreen again. It felt like she'd stepped into an alternate reality. She reached for her phone, which had been mute all day. The screen was lit up like a Christmas tree, with missed calls and a cascade of messages on WhatsApp. Craig was at the top, his texts relentless. But Kylie didn't even glance at them. There were also messages from Julie, Samuel, and Melanie. Instead, Kylie went straight to Noreen's messages. There was a funny photo of Noreen in the bath totally kicking back and a voice message. Kylie hit play. Noreen's voice was warm and playful. "Hey, Kylie. I've done the bath and it's the cat's pajamas. And I'm about to hit the hay. Well, if Trevor gives you any grief, just let me know. I'll put him in his place." A smile crept onto Kylie's face. She typed out a quick thanks. "Good night." Then Kylie turned to check the stream of messages from Craig. His voice notes must be a string of apologies, each one more desperate than the last. She skipped the voice notes, her stomach turning at the thought of his voice. And the messages were a mix of sad faces and pleading words. "Baby, I'm falling apart here. Can't eat, can't sleep. You know I need you. Did I push it too far by telling you to make up with your folks? I just want what's best for you." He thought he had her number and these would work. As she was about to check on Julie's message, Craig's call interrupted. She picked up. Craig said sadly, "Kylie, why the radio silence? Since you mentioned we're through, I've been a mess. You know I can't handle this without you. Did I cross the line by suggesting you make amends with your parents? You're new in the family, I just want you to get along with them." Kylie's mind drifted back to her past, where pleasing the Lampard family was her obsession, all because of Craig. She let out a sarcastic laugh. "Craig, why? Kylie, you still care about me, right?" Craig's voice was confident, his words laced with arrogance. He thought he had her wrapped around his finger. "Craig, you've got some nerve. If you don't want trouble, you'll return the $30,000 you owe me in the next 10 minutes, she said sharply before hanging up. A few days prior, Craig had claimed his family was in a financial pinch. Without hesitation, she had transferred the money her adoptive mother had given her, plus her own savings from working part-time in college. That money was meant for her adoptive mother Amanda. In her last life, it wasn't until she was confined to her bed that she discovered he had spent it all on Melanie on clothes and skincare. This time, she didn't care about Craig and Melanie, but Craig would pay every cent back. Craig gaped at his phone, stunned. Has Kylie lost her mind? Demanding her money back? Now, he had plans to take Melanie shopping at the trendy mall tomorrow, and the money might not even cover it. He thought in a rage, have I been too lenient with Kylie? And she thinks she could just end things on a whim. Does she really think I'm that desperate for her? She'll be crawling back to me soon, begging for forgiveness. He then quickly messaged Melanie. "Mel, remember we're meeting at the trendy mall, entrance 1, at noon tomorrow." 10 minutes had passed and still no money. Kylie knew in her gut he wasn't paying her back. She shook her head, her fingers flying over her phone as she pulled up the bank statements, the transfers, the messages where Craig had promised to make it right. She would sue him, and these were solid evidence. Then she checked the messages from Julie and Samuel. They were on her case big time. Samuel was especially pissed, threatening to cut off her credit card. Kylie smirked at the thought. That card had been gathering dust since the day he'd handed it to her. Then there was Melanie's message. It would have been like a slap in the face, all about how much her parents adored her. Kylie could almost hear the mocking tone in Melanie's voice. But she wasn't going to let it get to her. Not this time. She was taking control, cutting ties with the people who only brought her down. And her adopted family would be her only family. Kylie was just about to hit the hay when her phone buzzed with a message. It was from Ethan Thompson, her older brother. Back in the adopted family and her go-to guy for everything. "How's the new place treating you, honey?" he asked. Her lashes fluttered as she hit reply. "I could really use a dose of home right now." Ethan called her right then, his voice all warm and brotherly. "Just come back. You're always welcome here. Mom's been talking about you non-stop. I miss you guys too. I'll be home tomorrow," she said. "I'll make sure there's a feast waiting for you," he promised. "How's the big paper coming? You were knee-deep in research last I heard," Kylie added. There was a brief pause, and then Ethan's laughter filled her ear. Just the usual, buried in books and coffee. After they hung up, Kylie flipped through her phone's photo album. Seeing her family's smiling faces, she couldn't help but tear up. It had been so long since she'd seen them, not since her life had taken that sharp turn. Her birth parents only let her talk when they were in a good mood. The Lampard family had kept everyone at arm's length, and everyone just assumed she was being taken care of. After all, if she hadn't pushed Julie out of the way, things would have been different. Everyone figured her own mom, Julie, would look after her. She wiped away her tears and turned off her phone. She needed to get some rest. Tomorrow, she'd be home, and she didn't want to show up with puffy eyes. Kylie's alarm kicked off her day at the butt crack of dawn. She was a sunrise kind of gal, and after a quick splash and brush, she was downstairs. Yesterday, Trevor had said he wasn't into the whole live-in staff thing. The cleaning crew from the Walters residence came by each day to keep the joint shiny, but he was more of an eat-out kind of guy. So there Kylie was poking around the kitchen, checking out the fridge. And jackpot, it was loaded with fresh food. The cleaners must have been on the ball because everything looked ready to eat. She spotted some ham and decided to whip up a comforting batch of eggs Benedict. Trevor, dressed to impress in his suit, came downstairs and was hit with a tantalizing aroma that immediately stirred his hunger. Still adjusting to married life, Trevor did a double take when he saw Kylie in the kitchen, her figure accentuated by the apron she was wearing. Kylie, with a plate in hand, also paused when she noticed Trevor. She offered, "Morning, Mr. Walters, care for some breakfast? I've made eggs Benedict." The dish was a delightful assembly of poached eggs, ham, and hollandaise sauce on an English muffin. Kylie wasn't into the heavy breakfast scene. "Thanks, but I'm not really a breakfast person," Trevor replied, shaking his head. As he was about to head out, he left a black card on the table. "Use this for any expenses or household needs," he said. Kylie glanced at the card and then at Trevor and decided to keep it. She was more than capable of paying her own way, but she knew better than to refuse his offer. For now, she'd hold onto it, planning to return it when their agreement wrapped up. At the Walters group, Trevor had just gotten comfortable in his chair when Zack, his right-hand man, handed him the daily cup of joe. Zack was briefing him on their tight schedule, including a quick hop to the next town. The coffee aroma was tempting, but it wasn't the Java that had Trevor's mind spinning. It was the memory of the eggs Benedict Kylie had whipped up that morning. "Zack, could you pick up some eggs Benedict from the joint across the street?" Trevor asked, out of the blue. Zack blinked, thrown by the request. His boss wasn't exactly the breakfast type. "Eggs Benedict, sir," he repeated, just to be sure. "You got it," Trevor confirmed, sipping his coffee. With a shrug, Zack headed out, his mind racing. Is Mr. Walters on a new health kick or something? When the food arrived, Trevor took a bite and immediately frowned. The taste was off the charts, way too strong. Not the eggs Benedict he had in mind. He dropped his fork, signaling he was done. Zack, who had returned to check on things, raised an eyebrow. "Too hot, Mr. Walters?" "Nah, it's not that," Trevor replied, pushing the plate away. "Just take it away." "What?" "Oh sure," Zack replied. Zack grabbed the plate, a mix of confusion and curiosity on his face. "Is it the elevator incident that has my head in a twist? I can't read Mr. Walters's mind now either way. That eggs Benedict smells heavenly. Must try it out when we get back from the trip." Kylie's day was a whirlwind, starting with a lawyer's appointment and a police report. By noon, she was back at the Thompson residence. Her family had moved to Jardora 3 years ago due to her brother Horde Thompson's high school enrollment. Her phone was on fire with calls from Craig, but she hit the mute button, signaling him to back off. Over at the Lampard group, Craig was sweating bullets as the cops eyed him like a prime suspect. His co-workers were in a tizzy, whispering behind his back. Kylie didn't answer his phone and he tried to sound calm, explaining to the officers, "It's all a mix-up. Kylie and I are together. I'm not trying to scam her. We had a tiff and she's just blowing off steam." But the cops weren't having it. "We need you to come with us to clear things up," they insisted. Craig checked his watch, realizing he was running late for a date with Melanie, the girl who had been his unattainable dream in college. Memories came flooding back of how their relationship had started. Ever since he found out about Kylie's connection to Melanie, he dared to hope for a chance to get closer to her. He'd been with Kylie for years and the spark was long gone. But she was kind and good-hearted, and his mom loved her, so he'd never thought about ending things. But now it hit him, Kylie wasn't just talking when she said she wanted to break up and get her money back. He sent Kylie one last message, but she was ghosting him. It was dawning on him that she was serious about ending things. Cornered, Craig had no choice but to go to the police station. Meanwhile, at the trendy mall, Melanie was decked out in high-end fashion, her patience wearing thin as she waited for Craig. Just as she was about to text him, she noticed a group leaving the Walters Group building. Among them was Trevor, the CEO, a face she recognized from the financial news. In Jardora, the Lampard family was the creme de la creme, and the Walters family was just looking up at them. A catch like Trevor was out of Melanie's league for sure. Melanie let out a wishful sigh. "If I could snag a guy like him, I'd give anything." She was power walking towards him. Just as she was about to cross the street, she watched Trevor get into his car and peel out, leaving her in the dust. She made a resolution and said to herself, "TLL have dad work his magic for me. I'm gorgeous, got the looks and the curves. Even Kylie's boyfriend is head over heels for me. Maybe Trevor would be too. Where's Craig, though? He was supposed to take me shopping. Did he go to Kylie?" At the mention of Kylie, Melanie's face lit up with a smile. I can't wait to see how Kylie's gonna wriggle out of this one. She had the audacity to give me attitude at the hospital yesterday. Bored and waiting, she pulled out her phone and dialed Julie. Mom, I just called Kylie again, but she's still not responding. Should I go find her? Make an apology, maybe. Don't bother. Your dad's cut off her credit card, she'll be back soon enough. She's such a headache. If she was half as good as you, we'd be thanking our lucky stars, Julie said, her frustration palpable. She had been up all night, seething. After soothing her mom, Melanie hung up and called Austin, her older brother. She recounted the whole story, her voice trembling. Austin, should you and Claude call Kylie? Mom and Dad didn't sleep at Wink because of her. And she's your real sister. Austin, already stressed with his experiments going south, was even more irritated at his sister's drama. You're the sister we got. Let her do what she wants. Melanie smiled, feeling a rush of happiness. Austin, I know you're busy. Make sure to rest up. Yep, will do, he replied, trying to hide his annoyance. Kylie pushed open the door, and the scent of home-cooked food hit her like a warm hug. Amanda's kitchen magic was in full swing, transforming everyday ingredients into a sensory celebration. For a moment, Kylie stood there, the familiarity almost surreal. Her vision blurred with emotion as she watched Amanda and Ethan in their element, the kitchen buzzing with their playful banter. Kylie's crazy about this. Mom, go all out, Ethan said, his tone playful. Always do for my girl, Amanda shot back. Where are your brothers at? Horde and James just called. Stuck in traffic, but they're on their way, Ethan replied. Amanda's smile could have lit up the room. Great, it's been an age since we've all been at the table together. Right then, Kylie's phone vibrated with a message from Trevor. Business trip. Be back in a few days. She tapped out a roger that, and then she was in the kitchen, her voice bright. Guess who's home? In the past life, she'd reached out to the Lampard family for a lifeline. She knew Ethan and James had been through the ringer and could use some direction in Jardora. But she never got to ask. Samuel and Julie had made their disdain crystal clear. Kylie's back, Amanda said, her voice a symphony. Why don't you go unwind in the living room? Dinner's almost set. Ethan chimed in. We got this covered, honey. With a grin, Kylie agreed. The love from her family was a feeling she cherished to the core. Trevor's phone lit up with the short reply from Kylie as he rolled towards the airport, and he gave a little shrug that spoke volumes. Zack was all over it. Boss, if that's a thumbs down, I'll get the crew to whip something new, he said, ready to start a new thread on their group chat. Trevor raised an eyebrow at him. Who said I didn't like it? Zack kept quiet, not about to admit he'd read Trevor's face like a book. Instead, he gave a laugh that sounded more like a cough. Then, out of nowhere, their smooth ride turned into a heart-stopper as the car jammed on the brakes. Zack's laptop, not just any laptop, but a top-of-the-line model that had cost him a pretty penny, went flying and bit the dust. His eyes about bugged out of his head. Their drive looked like he'd seen a ghost as he shouted, "Pile up." They'd missed being part of it by the skin of their teeth. Trevor looked up to see the car in front of them, now just a memory under the fallen tanker, its logo the only thing left standing. The chaos had spread like wildfire. The overpass was a zoo, a sea of stuck cars and honking horns. Amanda and Ethan had cooked up a feast that could have fed a small army. James and Horde, Kylie's brothers, had just walked in. They closed in on Kylie the moment they saw her, their faces etched with concern. They didn't need to ask a lot of questions, their body language said it all. They were worried about how Kylie had been treated by the Lampard family. Kylie, if those Lampards give you any grief, just holler. We got your back, Horde said, his tone fierce. He'd never been a fan of the Lampard family, especially not the snooty sister who'd looked down her nose at them the first time they met. And to him, Kylie was family. Horde spot on. You're not in this alone, Ethan added, his voice gentle. He'd always been protective of Kylie, and it was clear she'd been having a tough time with the Lampard family. She looked like she'd lost weight, which broke his heart. Guys, don't be so dramatic. The Lampard family are Kylie's family now. They'd never mistreat her, Amanda said, trying to play peacemaker as she grabbed some sodas from the fridge. She knew her boys weren't fans of the Lampard family, but she also knew they were Kylie's relatives. Criticizing them too harshly would only make things harder for Kylie. Kylie let out a light laugh. I've moved out of the Lampard residence, found my own spot, and I'm not going back. What? The family exchanged worried glances. Why would she move out so suddenly? Have the Lampard family been unkind to her? You shouldn't be living alone. It's not safe, Amanda said quickly. Come back home. It's just me and Horde here. Your older brothers are always out working, they've got company housing. We can make it work. In Jardora, rent was sky high, so Amanda had only been able to afford a 2-bedroom apartment. The older boys were always out working, with their companies providing them places to stay. When they did come home for a reunion, it was a tight squeeze for the 3 brothers. "I'll take the couch. Kylie, you can have my room," Horde offered without hesitation. Before Kylie could finish her refusal, her phone rang. She was about to ignore it, but when she saw it was from Noreen, she picked up right away and called Noreen's name. "Kylie, a car accident happened to Trevor." Noreen's voice was urgent. Kylie tried to calm Noreen down. "Spill it, Noreen. Which hospital?" "I'm there in a flash." As soon as she got the details from Noreen, Kylie clicked off the call. She turned to her family, her expression a mix of regret and resolve. "Guys, Noreen's in a bind. I gotta go. I'll be back as soon as I can." Amanda and the others knew the score with Noreen. She was tight with Felicia, their neighbor back in the sticks. So they just let Kylie go. Once Kylie was out the door, Amanda let out a heavy breath. The Lampard family are giving Kylie a rough time. I can see it in her eyes. She's got something heavy on her mind, trying to keep us in the dark. Ethan, the steady one, spoke up after a moment of silence. "I'm gonna check in on Kylie, make sure she's holding up." "Same here," James chimed in, worry creasing his brow. "She's not in this alone." Horde, all fired up, balled his hands into fists. "If they are messing with Kylie, I'll make them pay." Kylie dashed into the hospital, her breath hitching. Noreen's frantic figure was easy to spot in the hallway, and Kylie beelined towards her. "Noreen," she said, her voice steady despite the worry knotting her stomach. Noreen's face crumpled with relief as she saw Kylie. She clutched Kylie's hand, her voice wavering. "Kylie, it was a nightmare. A car pile up on the overpass. The one that got hit, it was just ahead of Trevor's. That was so close." Kylie had seen the news flash on her phone, a massive pile-up involving more than a dozen cars. One of them, crushed under an overturned fuel tanker, had no survivors. The others involved were all injured and rushed to the hospital. The news didn't give much more than that. Seeing Noreen's distress, Kylie's heart clenched. Trevor must have been in the thick of it. "He's tough, Noreen. Mr. Walters is going to be fine," Kylie said, her words a gentle promise. Noreen's eyes brimmed with tears, but she managed a nod. Kylie's calm was a lifeline, pulling Noreen back from the edge of panic. As Trevor stepped out, the first thing that hit his ears was Kylie's voice, all soothing and soft. "Trevor, what's the doc say?" Noreen was right there, checking him out like a hawk, worried that something might be off. Trevor just gave her a don't worry smile and said, "All good, Grandma. The doc's given me the thumbs up." Noreen's face relaxed and she blurted out, "Thank God." Then, with a sudden thought, she clutched Kylie's hand and turned to Trevor. "Kylie came rushing over the moment I called. You guys are newly hitched, and this accident happened before you could even throw a wedding party. It's been a real shocker. Trevor, you should take her out and help her distress." Kylie tried to chime in, "Noreen," as she wanted to say she wasn't scared and she was more worried about Noreen, but Noreen was already on another tangent. "I'm beat from this hospital run," Noreen said, giving Kylie a playful nudge. "I'll go home. You two go have some fun." She was relieved Trevor was okay and figured it was the perfect opportunity to get the newlyweds to spend some quality time together. She knew from experience that love needed a little TLC. Trevor got what his grandma was up to. He looked at Kylie and asked, "Ms. Thompson, how about we go grab something to cat?" Noreen wasn't having any of the formal stuff. "Call her Kylie, not Ms. Thompson, she's your wife." After Craig sauntered out of the police station, his mood as dark as a storm cloud. The cops had been riding him all day, and no matter how many times he tried to prove his relationship with Kylie, they just weren't having it. Kylie's side painted it like a simple loan, and he wasn't about to hand back the cash in his bank, no way. He reckoned Kylie was just feeling left out. He'd been spending more and more time with Melanie, and maybe Kylie was throwing a wrench in just to get her share of the spotlight. If she wanted him around, she could have just spoken up. But this mess was only driving him further away. With frustration, Craig dialed Kylie's number again. She was on the subway, her heart still stinging from their last encounter, when she saw his name pop up on her phone. After a moment's pause, she answered. Craig was caught off guard that she picked up so fast. But this made him confirm what he thought: Kylie was just making a scene and snapping the spotlight. So he said, "Hey, are you upset because I've been all about work? I'm coming to see you right now. We've been a team for years and I've always got your back, right? The company's giving a bonus at the end of the year. 100,000, and it's all yours if you want it. My mom's been like family to you, and you know she's been under the weather. Don't leave me. I love you, and everything I earn is for us." Kylie's voice was icy, her words cutting through the line. Craig, you need to pay me back or I'll have to take it up with the lawyers. Craig was stunned. Wait, what's going on? Since when is this about money? Is our relationship just about the cash? Craig's words upset Kylie. She hung up, leaving Craig with his phone in hand, his expression darkening. Kylie, what's gotten into you? Are you trying to push me away? I mean it. He let out a sigh, knowing he had to transfer the money for now. If he didn't, things at work could get even more complicated after the police visit. He'd find a way to get the money back later. He decided to let his mom deal with this. Once the transfer was done, he sent Kylie a message. Honey, I've sent the money over. Don't worry about my mom, I'll figure something out. If you're feeling down, how about we take a trip this weekend? Kylie's phone buzzed with a notification and she found the bank app update. After a daze, she tapped to transfer the bulk of it to Amanda's account, keeping just a sliver for herself. Mom, this is from my summer gigs in college and the extras you've given me. Figured you could use it more than me, she texted Amanda. Amanda's heart skipped a beat when she saw the bank alert and then Kylie's message. She was dialing Kylie's number in a flash, her voice carrying a hint of panic. Sweetie, you just got your diploma and you're still between jobs. You should keep that money for yourself. I'm all set and your brothers sent me more than enough. I can't take this from you. Let me return it. Go have some fun and buy something you love. I don't need it, really, Amanda insisted. Kylie could hear the genuine concern in Amanda's voice. She offered a reassuring smile on the phone. Mom, I'm good. You guys can use it more right now. I'm about to head underground, but we'll talk when I come over in a few days. The call ended and Amanda was left with a mix of pride and concern. Her daughter was trying to be helpful, but something was definitely up. She figured this must be about the Lampard family. She had to get to the bottom of this. Amanda had never thought she'd reach out to Julie, but this was about Kylie. As a mother, she could sense when something wasn't right. With a deep breath, Amanda pulled up Julie's number and made the call. Julie had saved Amanda's number, but only because of Kylie. She'd meant to delete it later but had forgotten. Having Amanda in her contacts was like a blemish on her phone. Just thinking about it made her skin crawl. Julie answered with a curt, "What do you want, Amanda?" Amanda sensed the disdain in Julie's tone, her brow knitting in response. "I'm just calling to check on Kylie." "Kylie?" Julie's voice dripped with superiority. "She's been quite the handful, disrespectful and ungrateful. The painting she gave me for my birthday tattered and claiming it was ancient. Please, it's clear she was poorly raised. Does she think we're clueless?" Julie scoffed. "We don't expect her to be as perfect as Melanie, but she's making a fool of us. She's even threatened to run away. If she's with you, tell her she's not welcome back unless she apologizes properly." Amanda's eyes welled up with tears, her whole body shaking. She was known for her kindness and for keeping her words soft, but hearing Julie belittle Kylie, comparing her to Melanie, and making her out to be worthless, she reached her breaking point. "Kylie is a good girl," Amanda said, her voice shaking with emotion. "If she's leaving, it's because you've pushed her to it. You're the ones who should be apologizing." Hanging up, Amanda couldn't hold back her tears. The way Julie had spoken about Kylie, as if she was worthless, broke her heart. Kylie made her way through the rows of curios at Jardora's Vintage Market, a hotspot for anything old school. Toting a bulky bag, she was carrying a piece of history, a painting she'd scooped up from the Lampard residence. It had been in rough shape, but after some serious TLC, the artwork was as good as new. She'd bought it from an old-timer here for $30,000. The painting was a mess when she got it, but she saw potential in the chaos. It took some serious elbow grease, but she managed to put the fragments back together. The old vendor had mentioned it was a family treasure, possibly from the Renaissance era. But with no name to the artist and a face only a mother could love, it was hard to place a value on it. The most he'd ever gotten for it was a couple of $100. Kylie, though, had a knack for this sort of thing. She could tell the painting was the work of a master, someone who had a way with nature scenes. If she were to sell it at an auction, it could fetch around $300,000. But in this market, she might get half of that. But money wasn't on her mind at that time. Kylie was on a mission to find the perfect birthday present for Julie, something unique and unforgettable. Kylie stepped into the antique shop, her gaze darting around the place. The owner, Liam Parker, a seasoned guy who'd seen it all, gave her a quick once-over and went back to his newspaper. He could tell at a glance that Kylie wasn't there to buy. "Hey, you." Liam looked up from his paper, a spark of curiosity in his eyes. "The Renaissance era, huh? Into ancient art from the Renaissance era?" Kylie asked, her voice bouncing off the old bookshelves. Kylie nodded, reaching into her bag and pulling out a painting. She unwrapped it smoothly, revealing a piece that looked like it had just left the artist's studio. Liam's jaw practically hit the floor. He'd heard about some bigwig in Jardora, who was on the hunt for the Renaissance-era pieces. But this one, it was something else. The restoration was top-notch, the kind of work that was hard to find. His excitement was palpable. How much for this masterpiece? But first you gotta tell me, who fixed it up so nice? He had a couple of paintings in the back that were in rough shape bought cheaply. He'd been looking for someone to fix them, but no one had been up to the challenge. The damage was too much for most. Liam wasn't just worried about the money, he felt bad for the art. But today, Kylie might just be his lucky charm. I did the restoration, Kylie said, grinning. Liam's eyebrows shot up. Kylie didn't look like the type to mess with ancient art. He was skeptical. You did this? Kylie nodded, her confidence shining through. Yup, all me. Liam gave Kylie a once-over, thinking how the kids these days were all about the hype. But Kylie was cool as a cucumber, no sign of nerves. He knew he had to have that painting. Listen, I've got a couple of paintings that are in rough shape, Liam said, his voice smooth as silk. If they can be fixed up, I'm talking a sweet deal, $150,000 for each. If you've got any family who's into art, it might be worth a mention. The offer was more than generous, especially since the paintings weren't by any bigwigs. Kylie was strapped for cash, and the mention of money had her biting. Let's see what you've got, she said, her interest piqued. Liam, with a bit of a gambler's spirit, showed Kylie the paintings that needed some serious love. They were in a bad state, just like the one she had brought in. But this time it wouldn't take that long since she wasn't that busy. TM in, Kylie said, her voice firm. Liam saw the resolve in her eyes and figured, why not? No one else was stepping up to the plate, so he might as well give her a shot. They shook hands, and the deal was done. Liam bought Kylie's painting for a solid $150,000. She didn't try to negotiate, the price was fair for a piece that was old but not by a famous hand. Kylie left the vintage market at 3 in the afternoon. She had a new gig lined up. Starting tomorrow, she'd be at the store from 9 to 3, working her magic on the old paintings. She knew Liam was skeptical, but she had the chops to prove him wrong. After all, she'd been learning from Felicia for years, she knew her stuff. Arriving at the airport, Trevor slid into the back seat of the car that was waiting to take him to the Walters Group's branch office. Zack was already on the job, his fingers dancing across his laptop keyboard. He was filtering through a stack of documents and contracts, keeping Trevor in the loop with what was what. The quiet hum of the car was sliced through by the catchy tune of Trevor's phone. He hit the answer button. Hey, Grandma. Noreen's voice came at him like a freight train. What's this about you jetting off again? I thought you were going to have a nice dinner with Kylie and get to know her better. What's so all-fired important that it can't wait until you're back on your feet? Don't we pay those guys at Walters Group for something? The car was gliding down the road, but it was as silent as a library inside. Zack could hear every word, but he was quick to look out the window, pretending he was a million miles away. Trevor gave Zack a look and then massaged his temple. Grandma, Ms. Thompson's got her own stuff going on too. And I said to call her Kylie, Noreen shot back. You two are hitched now. Don't be so formal. She was worried that Trevor's cool attitude might push Kylie away. Noreen had seen her fair share of reality TV to know that playing it too cool could end up with Trevor regretting it when Kylie was gone. You wrap things up and get back as soon as you can, Noreen said with a sigh. I've got a feeling Kylie's carrying too much, and it's breaking my heart to see her doing it all alone. Trevor said, fine, I'll be back soon. Trevor's mind kept replaying the scene at City Hall. Kylie had been pretty clear about what she wanted before she signed anything. He had a feeling it was all tied up with the Lampard family. After hanging up, Trevor shot a glance at Zack. In your scoop on Kylie, did you find anything about how she's linked to the Lampard family? Zack gave a quick shake of his head. The Lampard family don't seem to be her biggest cheerleaders. None of their usual crowd knows she's in the picture. Trevor thought about it. Kylie's demands were probably just her way of giving the Lampard family a hard time, a little girl's way of showing she was not to be messed with. But he'd said he'd do it, and he meant it. Kylie breezed through the shopping mall with a mission, stock up on the basics and maybe score a new ride. Her place at the Starlit Villa was a bit of a haul from the city's action, and she was in the market for a set of wheels. She had her eye on one of those zippy electric numbers, something that wouldn't cost her an arm and a leg, like around 30 grand. As she was checking out the cars, she spotted a couple through the dealership window. It was Craig and Melanie, looking like they were straight out of a magazine spread. Craig was trying to smooth things over with Melanie, who was clearly still ticked off about something. Kylie's heart clenched. Seeing them together was like déjà vu, but not the good kind. Memories of her and Craig flashed through her mind, but she quickly shut that door. Her hand, almost on autopilot, grabbed her phone. With a quick click, she captured the moment. Kylie dropped a deposit on a sweet ride and planned to cruise out tomorrow. But as she hit the pavement, her phone buzzed with a call from Jasmine Fraley, Craig's mother. "Kylie, hon, how's it hanging? You've been MIA at the hospital." Jasmine's voice was all smiles, but Kylie wasn't buying the act. Kylie's heart sank. She remembered how she'd once been a regular in Jasmine's hospital room in her last life, offering comfort like a loving daughter. The other patients had no idea they weren't related, but that was all a facade. Jasmine had known about Craig and Melanie's secret affair the whole time. After Kylie's amputation, Jasmine had made it clear over the phone that Kylie was never good enough for her son, and now, with her disability, she was even less so. The call had been brutal, a stark contrast to the sweet Jasmine. It had cut deep, leaving Kylie in tears. But now she was done being hurt. "Jazz, let's cut the chase. Craig and one are over. Don't hit the up again." Kylie's words were blunt, and she ended the call before Jasmine could even stutter. Jasmine was left there, phone in hand, like a deer in headlights. "Kylie, who used to be all about my Craig, has just iced me out. What gives?" Scratching her head, Jasmine fired off a voice message to Craig. "Hey, I just got ghosted by Kylie. She says it's done between you two. What's the 411? Craig was at a restaurant, fork halfway to his mouth with Melanie, when his phone lit up with Jasmine's message. His stomach dropped. Kylie, who was always about chasing his shadow, had just thrown in the towel. What had flipped her? Trevor was taking in the night view from the Opulence Hotel's top-floor suite when a knock on the door broke the silence. Zack barged in, his eyes wide with a mix of excitement and fear. "Mr. Walters, you gotta hear this. Ms. Thompson was dead on about that pearl pendant. It's stolen property. He'd done some snooping, and the truth was more chilling than fiction. The pendant's previous owner had been taken out by some heavy-duty poison. It was a dark chapter that the pendant had been through, changing its color to an eerie black and purple before it was cleaned up to its current, vibrant pearl." Zack's voice was shaky, and he rubbed his arms as if to ward off a chill. "This thing's got bad juju, man. It's been a total buzzkill." Trevor exhaled a cloud of smoke, his gaze steady. "If she says to return it, that's what we'll do." "Already taken care of," Zack said, a hint of relief in his voice. "I sent it back, no questions asked. This pendant's not worth the hassle it brings." Kylie raced up the driveway of the Walters residence in her new electric car, her pulse racing. She'd gotten a distress call from Noreen, who wasn't feeling well at all. As soon as Kylie arrived, she tossed her keys to Grant, the butler, and hurried into the house. Inside, she found Trevor, looking sharp in a white shirt that accentuated his broad shoulders and long legs. He glanced over when she came in, his look a lot cooler than his usual warmth for his grandmother. Kylie paused, noticing the frown lines on Trevor's forehead. She suddenly remembered she was still in her workout clothes. Chapter 12. From her last-minute dash out of Liam's shop, her white tee now decorated with unflattering splotches. She took a quick inventory of her appearance before looking back up. "How's Noreen?" Trevor's voice was clipped. "She's upstairs resting." Kylie didn't have time to thaw his frosty demeanor. With a nod to Trevor, she took the stairs two at a time, her heart heavy with worry for Noreen. But Trevor flagged her down. "Well, Ms. Thompson," he said, all serious. "We gotta chat about something before you go see Grandma." She pivoted, an eyebrow arched in curiosity. "Lay it on me, then." "Grandma's not doing so hot, and she wants us to crash here for a few days." He dropped the news, his face etched with sincerity. Kylie bobbed her head, cool as a cucumber. "No sweat, I'm cool with that." But Trevor dropped a bombshell. "She's asking us to share a room." Kylie's jaw almost hit the floor. "I'll talk to her," she stammered, her eyes as wide as saucers. "Let's just do it. The doctors say her emotions can't take too many ups and downs, so we need to keep up appearances for her," Trevor said, like he was reading from a script. "But I promise it's all an act, no feelings involved." And with that, he was up the stairs, leaving Kylie to chew on his words. She stood there for a beat, and then let out a small laugh. This was all a game, and as long as it scored points with Noreen, she was in. Trevor's little disclaimer about their non-existent love was probably his way of making sure they both stayed in the friend zone. But he didn't need to fret about her getting all hard-eyed. She was on the same wavelength. It was all just part of the gig. Kylie bounded up the stairs, spotting Noreen looking a tad fragile on the bed. "Hey, Noreen," she greeted with a gentle smile. Noreen, hearing the sweet tone, waved Trevor away like he was a bothersome fly. Kylie, get over here, sugar. Trevor, feeling as useful as a screen door on a submarine, tried to keep his cool. How you doing, Noreen? Anything else that's bothering you? Kylie inquired, her voice as soothing as a lullaby. Noreen gave a slight shake of her head, her voice barely a whisper. I'm hanging in there, just a bit wiped out. Seeing you two makes my day a lot brighter. Is your head acting up? I could give you a massage. Back in the day, Felicia used to love it when I massaged her head. Let me go wash up real quick, Kylie added, slipping out of the room to finally clean her hands. Trevor's brow lifted, his disbelief as plain as day. Kylie was trying a bit too hard, and he was onto her game. As soon as Kylie left, Noreen turned to Trevor, a sly smile playing on her lips. This one's a keeper, don't mess this up. I got this. Kylie returned soon, and Noreen faked a snooze. I'm feeling a bit sleepy. Kylie, dear, Trevor's been having these headaches. Why don't you give him a massage? Kylie froze, not expecting that curveball. Trevor was just as surprised by his grandmother's sudden suggestion. Grant, take notes. Kylie's got magic hands. Once you've learned her moves, you can be my personal masseur, Noreen said, playfully drawing Grant into the mix. Grant caught on quickly to what Noreen wanted. With a respectful grin, he said, Mrs. Kylie Walters, I'm your man. Thank you, Ms. Th. Trevor glanced at Kylie, about to speak, but Noreen's sharp look made him pause. He corrected himself smoothly, I'll be needing your help, Kylie. Kylie's smile flickered for a moment. It wasn't that she was bothered by her first name, but coming from Trevor with that tone, it felt a bit too familiar. Meanwhile, Julie got a call from the hospital. They were running low on blood for Melanie's treatment and needed her to come in tomorrow. Melanie was devastated. Mom, you don't think she's just going to leave me to fend for myself, do you? She must really hate me if she wants me out of the picture. I'm already sick, and now I've got to deal with her attitude. And we're not even family now, Melanie said, tears streaming down her face as she hugged Julie. Julie's heart ached as she held Melanie. I'll handle it. I've been giving her the silent treatment for a few days now. She's had time to reflect. I'll call her, get her to come to the hospital and donate blood for you. Melanie looked at Julie with a hint of worry. But will she come without making demands? I don't want to cause any more stress for you and Dad. Don't worry, if she pulls any stunts, she's out of here for good. I think she might be regretting how things went down after our last talk. She's probably just waiting for me to make the first move, Julie sneered. Julie's face clouded as she thought about Kylie, her biological daughter. Kylie had always been a disappointment, never quite fitting in. Melanie felt a smile tug at her lips. The more Julie disliked Kylie, the better Julie would feel about Melanie. With a deep breath, Julie picked up her phone and dialed Kylie's number. And Kylie was meticulously massaging Trevor's head, with Grant observing every move. It was an odd dance, their faces closer than they'd ever been, and the tension was palpable. Trevor had initially thought Kylie was just trying to win his grandma's heart, pulling out all the stops to impress. But as her fingers deftly worked their way across his head, he felt an unexpected wave of relaxation wash over him, a rarity for someone who usually struggled to unwind. Grant had come with the idea of learning a new trick or two, as Noreen had put it. But the massage was a complex ballet of pressure points. Despite Kylie's patient guidance, Grant was hopelessly lost. Each touch had a name, a purpose, but it was all hard. It dawned on her that Noreen probably hadn't expected her to become an expert. The calm was suddenly pierced by the sharp ring of Kylie's phone. Grant, noticing it on the side table, called out, Mrs. Walters, it's your phone. Kylie finished the massage and reached for her phone. Hello, she answered, her tone a blend of curiosity and wariness. Julie's voice came through the line, all high and mighty. You're on the phone now. Figured out you're in hot water. Let's sweep the other day under the rug. I can walk you through this crap later. For now, just get your butt back here. We're heading to the hospital tomorrow. Kylie glanced at Trevor, who was catching some shut-eye on the couch, and slipped out quietly with her phone. As the door shut behind her, Trevor's eyes popped open. He stared at the door, a steely look in his eyes. He could make out the muffled scolding from Kylie's phone. It seemed the Lampard family were really laying into her. Julie, not hearing anything back, was getting more ticked off by the second. You lost your voice or what? Talk. Wanna drag me back to be Melanie's personal blood bank? Kylie shot back, a bite to her words. Julie's brow furrowed at the flat tone in Kylie's voice. What's this about a blood bank? Mel's your sis. It's just a little blood. Don't be so dramatic. Just get home. I've upgraded you to a room that's almost as sweet as her. A humorless laugh escaped Kylie. The sound traveled through the phone, and Julie got the wrong idea, thinking Kylie was pleased. After the hospital, you'll go to the office with your Dale. He's set you up with a clerk gig, Julie continued, her words sharp. All good, Mrs. Lampard. Kylie's voice dripped with sarcasm. Her own mother's true face was a real eye-opener. What did you just call me? Julie's temper flared. I'm your mother. Is that how you roll as a mom? People might think I'm your arch-nemesis, Kylie retorted, her voice icy. In her past life, she'd been stuck in the dinkiest room of the mansion, with Julie barely making an appearance, and when she did, it was just to look down on her for her disability. Let Melanie have all the love she could handle. What are you saying? That's how you talk to me? Julie's voice rose. You're spending our money, and your dad's cut off your credit card. If you don't want to be out on the street, get back here and apologize. Kylie had already pulled the phone away from her car. When Julie's rant was over, she brought the phone back. She sneered, you and Mr. Lampard aren't that old. You should still have your marbles. Since one came to the Lampard family, one haven't spent a dime of yours. Check the credit card statements. Always stirring up trouble but never took a moment for ink things through. You two really need to use your brains better. Kylie ended the call, her jaw set firm. Julie's phone clattered against the coffee table, her jaw set firm. She's got some nerve, saying she never took our money. Like I was born yesterday, she huffed to herself, the disbelief seeping into her tone. Melanie raised an eyebrow, sensing the perfect storm brewing. What's the scoop, Mom? You look like you could fight a fire with that glare, she said, trying to pry. In her eyes, Kylie didn't stand a chance against her. And if Melanie played her cards right, she could be Trevor's girl in no time, leaving Kylie in the dust. Julie's face was red with anger as she lobbed her phone onto the couch. She's not coming home, talking back, and claims she hasn't spent any of our money. What kind of parenting did Amanda do? Raising such a bad girl. Melanie's eyes danced with a secret knowledge. She knew Kylie wasn't lying. Craig had mentioned Kylie's work ethic during holidays and weekends, saving up for herself. But she wasn't about to defend Kylie. Kylie has the card Dad gave her. It's silly to think she can fib without getting caught. Mom, don't let her get under your skin. Julie's anger only grew at Melanie's words. This is outrageous. She huffed, her voice laced with irritation. Kylie strolled through the Walters residence, her destination clear, the vineyard. There she joined in with the staff, picking clusters of grapes that were heavy with the season's promise. She then made her way to the strawberry fields, delighting in the sweetness of the fruits that far surpassed anything she'd ever picked up at the supermarket. The staff had told her it was the perfect summer weather that had made them so sweet. As she was tending to the strawberries, lost in her thoughts, Trevor showed up. He looked like a model, all suited up, exuding an air of sophistication that seemed to intensify in the soft evening light. Kylie looked up at him, a bit starstruck. She had to give it to him, Trevor was definitely easy on the eyes. He noticed her staring, and his expression darkened. She'd seen that look before. Trevor was clearly not a fan of being gawked at. Grandma's awake. Let's head in for dinner, Trevor said, his voice cutting through the tranquility of the vineyard. Perfect timing, she said, straightening up with a smile. I've got strawberries and grapes to contribute to the feast. Trevor's response was a nonchalant nod, his demeanor suggesting he wasn't quite buying her innocent act. He seemed to be thinking she was trying to play some game, maybe even conspiring with his grandmother to get closer to him. He'd been down this road before, and he wasn't interested in the drama. But Kylie didn't care about his thoughts at all. Kylie sauntered up to Noreen, a platter of grapes and strawberries in hand. Got them from the vineyard. Noreen smiled. She grinned, her eyes twinkling. Grant told me Trevor finally caught some Z's thanks to Kylie's help. It's just a matter of time before Trevor realizes what a catch she is. Kylie had a way of being real and caring. Felicia had shared stories about Kylie's green thumb since she was a little tyke. Kylie had always been the kind to lend a hand, even when she was just a kid. Yeah, I used to mess with these back in the sticks, Kylie said, her tone casual. But they never hit the spot, always a bit sour. Now I'm wiser, it's all about the seeds and sun. My old spot was shady as heck. Oh, let me handle these first. Chatting with Noreen was easy for Kylie, their talks flowed like a smooth brook. It was probably because Noreen had the same genuine warmth that Felicia did. Noreen let out a hearty laugh. Felicia told me you were a farm pro even as a kid. She seemed to be picturing it. You were so tiny, but you worked those fields like a seasoned farmer. Felicia always mentioned how Kylie had a head on her shoulders, helping out with the farm chores to lighten the load for her adoptive family. The image of that determined little girl, tirelessly working the land, was both adorable and heartwarming. Meanwhile, Trevor couldn't help but notice the duo, totally engrossed in their conversation. There was something about Kylie that nagged at him. She seemed all sunshine and smiles now, but he could have sworn she'd been checking him out earlier at the vineyard. Noreen nudged Kylie and Trevor towards their room with a playful twinkle in her eye after a hearty dinner. "You two are my little cheerleaders. But it's getting late, so scoot. Go have your private time and get some beauty sleep." Kylie and Trevor had to play along. In their room, Kylie's gaze fell on the romantic decorations adorning the room. It was a sweet touch, but it felt a bit mismatched for their situation. After a grueling day of restoring an ancient painting without a break, Kylie was ready to unwind. She looked at Trevor. "Who wants to shower first?" Trevor's gaze was steady. "We're not really a couple, Kylie. We're just playing along. Remember?" "Trevor, come on, it's not like that. You don't shower before bed." "I'm all for playing along, but I'm not hitting the hay without a shower," Kylie retorted. Trevor was momentarily at a loss for words. Kylie found a nightgown in the wardrobe, which was stocked with a variety of clothes for both of them. Grant had been thoughtful and prepared everything they might need. "I'm going to take the shower first. Don't worry, I won't take long," she added, heading towards the bathroom. The sound of the shower soon echoed through the room. Trevor wasn't used to the idea of a woman showering in his space. It was a new experience and the sound was oddly captivating. With a determined look, he was about to make a quiet exit when he almost collided with Grant. Grant was holding a steaming bowl. "Mrs. Walters made this for you," he said. "She thinks it'll fix you right up." Trevor rolled his eyes, a hint of a smile escaping. "Is she trying to turn me into a soap opera hero?" he muttered. He took the bowl from Grant. "I'll take it from here," he said, shutting the door with a bit more force than necessary. Inside, the shower's drone continued to needle him. Trevor's gaze hardened as he looked at the bowl. He was starting to second-guess his decision to let this situation into his life. His head was throbbing, a physical reminder of his growing stress. He rubbed his forehead, memories of Kylie's soothing hands on his head earlier. Her touch had been a brief respite, a gentle pressure that had chased away his tension for a few precious moments. Trevor's phone lit up with a text from Zack. "Mr. Walters, can I get Ms. Thompson's WhatsApp account?" Trevor peeked at the bathroom door and typed back, "Sure," but then he continued, "What's up? You got a thing for her or something?" Zack's eyes bugged out at the implication. "Crushing on her? No freaking way. Even though I know the whole marriage thing is a sham, I don't dare to get a crush on my boss's wife." He typed furiously, "Nope, not at all. I found this pearl pendant and I'm thinking of buying it. I just want her to check it out first." Trevor's reply was short and sweet, "Fine." With Trevor's thumbs up, Zack had sent a friend request to Kylie on WhatsApp in no time, but after a long 10 minutes, there was still no sign of her accepting. Zack's fingers twitched over his phone, then he texted Trevor, "Boss, Ms. Thompson hasn't hit accept yet." The response came back almost immediately, "She's in the shower." Zack's mind started to run wild. Are they? But this is supposed to be a fake marriage, right? And they're already doing it. Trevor was a gym regular, all ripped and cut. If Zack's guess was true, then Kylie was probably otherwise engaged for the night. Zack had planned to send her some photos of pearl pendants before bed, hoping she could help him pick a couple tomorrow. Then, out of the blue, his phone buzzed with a notification. Zack blinked, thinking he might be seeing things. Zack sat there, in a daze for a few minutes. His doubts set in, and he typed out, "Ms. Thompson." No answer. More waiting, more silence. After another 10 minutes with no reply from Kylie, Zack let out a breath he'd been holding. It was just my imagination working overtime. There's no way Mr. Walters could have been that quick. Kylie was wiped out after her shower. She asked Trevor which side of the bed she should crash on and then just sprawled out, barely able to keep her eyes open. As she was about to put her phone on silent, she saw a friend request from Zack on WhatsApp. She hit accept and let her phone slide onto the nightstand. Trevor grabbed his clothes and headed for the bathroom. Before he closed the door, he saw Kylie's eyes were already closed, her breathing steady. He couldn't help but chuckle. She's either a heavy sleeper or a great actress. He came out of the bathroom fully dressed, expecting to see her still pretending. But no, she was out like a light, not moving an inch. He had to give her credit, she was consistent. The presence of a woman in his bed was new territory for him. He climbed in, but she didn't budge. Her breathing was steady and rhythmic. He was about to turn off the light, his face a mix of surprise and annoyance, when he noticed the pillows. Two of them, right down the middle of the bed, creating a clear line. His eyebrows shot up. Is she really trying to keep me at bay? She's overthinking it. Even if she strips down in front of me, I wouldn't be interested. Trevor woke up feeling like he'd been hit by a truck in a good way. For a second, he was sure it was still the middle of the night. but the sunlight sneaking through a gap in the curtains told him the difference. He actually slept through the whole night. Just then, Kylie rolled over, her eyes fluttering open to find Trevor sitting there. She looked a bit dazed, still getting used to the idea of being hitched. She offered him a small, somewhat awkward smile. "Morning," Trevor said, his gaze briefly resting on her face. "Morning," Kylie replied, then added, "TM going to get dressed." She slid out of bed. Trevor followed suit, putting on his watch and checking the time, 7:15 a.m. They both headed to clean up, then emerged almost in unison. Noreen had been up for hours. When Grant mentioned that the couple was still asleep, she'd been waiting since 5:30 a.m., and the longer she waited, the more delighted she became. She knew Trevor well. As a kid, he'd been fine, but as an adult, he'd developed this annoying habit of insomnia. Now, seeing him sleep soundly next to Kylie was a rare sight. Usually, if he was up at this hour, it was because he was dealing with jet lag. When she saw them coming downstairs together, she beamed at them. "Come on, breakfast is ready. We've got options," she called out cheerfully. "How are you feeling, Noreen?" Kylie asked, her concern for Noreen's health evident. "TM better, dear. Don't worry about me," Noreen reassured her, not wanting Kylie to fret. She smiled to herself. "Of course, I know their marriage isn't real. Come on, I'm sharp as a tack. My health is fragile, but I'll hold on for as long as I can. Maybe I'll make it until I see Trevor and Kylie make it work for real." Noreen looked at Trevor's face, noting how he looked more approachable today, without the usual cold, sleep-deprived sternness. "You seem to have slept well last night," she commented. "Yep, slept like a baby," Trevor replied, deliberately ignoring his grandmother's teasing tone. "Like a baby? You were out by 10 and didn't wake up until after 7. That's almost a week's worth of sleep for you, isn't it?" Noreen teased, unable to resist needling him about his usual cold demeanor. Trevor was left speechless. Kylie, hearing Noreen's words, turned to Trevor, surprised. "Is his sleep issue that serious? I remember Noreen mentioning it before, but hearing it now, it hit home. Hasn't he fallen asleep easily when I massaged his head yesterday?" "Kylie," Noreen asked, "Grant said she didn't quite catch those acupressure points yesterday. Could you come back tonight and show her again?" Of course, Kylie agreed readily. There were indeed many points on the head, and it was tough to remember them all at once. She'd make a diagram tonight, marking all the points clearly. Seeing Kylie agree so easily, Trevor's eyes darkened, feeling increasingly that she was playing games, trying to win over his grandmother and get closer to him. "Maybe I've been hasty the day we got the certificate. Perhaps I should have Zack look into Kylie and her boyfriend today. I couldn't risk having someone with ulterior motives around Grandma. And the 3-year agreement might need to be cut short," he thought. Kylie cruised into the vintage market, her phone lighting up as she killed the engine. She'd been too preoccupied that morning to scroll through her messages. It was a ping from Zack, a new name in her contacts from the previous night. "Hey Zack, what's the haps?" she texted back. Zack was just diving into his workday and responded in a flash. "Hey, could you lend me a hand?" "Kylie, spill it." He sent over some photos of pearl pendants he'd been eyeing the night before. "Zack, I'm so over the old one. Sent it packing. Think you can help me pick a fresh one?" Kylie glanced at the clock, 8:55 a.m., and pecked out a reply. "Got my hands full at the moment, but I'll hit you up tonight." Zack squinted at her message, a question mark hanging in the air. Tonight? Was she really going to have a free moment for him? His thoughts meandered to the boss's office, still empty at this hour. Trevor wasn't in yet. Last night must have been a doozy. His musings were interrupted by Trevor's sudden appearance. "Zack, I need you to look into something for me. I want the dirt on Kylie and Craig. Every last detail." Zack raised an eyebrow. "On Ms. Thompson? Down to the nitty-gritty," Trevor said, his tone steely. He was fishing for any reason why she'd suddenly agreed to marry him. Like something had shifted to make her want to get close. Zack nodded, his face a canvas of bewilderment. He thought they've just been together, right? So why the sudden interest in looking into her life? Is Mr. Walters feeling brushed off or something? That doesn't seem to be the case. If Zack hadn't met Kylie before, he might have thought she had some hidden agenda with Trevor. But after meeting her, he got the feeling that she wasn't that into him. "You think they're still hooked up?" he asked after hesitation. If that was the case, Kylie would be playing a dangerous game, and Trevor would be the unwitting other man with a ring on it. Trevor wasn't the type to make accusations without proof. "Haven't a clue," he admitted. Look into it," Zack promised, ready to uncover the truth. Trevor simply nodded, his mind already on the next move. Kylie had been going non-stop since breakfast, and by lunch, Liam had brought in a feast that could have fed a small army. The shop was usually manned by Liam and a young guy named Kevin Roth, fresh off the high school graduation. Kevin wasn't the bookworm type, so he'd jumped straight into the workforce. He had this uncanny ability to switch between languages, chatting up customers from all over the place with ease. Liam paid him decently and threw in free meals but no housing. There were bonuses for showing up every day and for making sales. Kevin was into live streaming, using his charm and good looks to sell products online. He had a solid fan base and had made a killing the day before with a single sale, raking in a hefty commission. "Kylie, let's grab some barbecue tonight, my treat," Kevin said between bites of his lunch, trying to score an invite. But before Kylie could answer, Liam gave him the side eye, the universal sign for not a good idea. "She's been working her fingers to the bone restoring those old paintings all day. She needs rest, not barbecue. And you, focus on your stream this afternoon. Try to sell off those new items we got in." Kylie just smiled. "I can't tonight. I need to be with my family. They're under the weather." Kevin's face fell, but he tried to hide his disappointment. "All right. Once this painting is finished, I'll take you both out for a barbecue feast," Kylie promised. She was kind to him since he was her brother Horde's peer, and would remind her of Horde. "Fine." Kevin's spirits lifted for a moment, but then he remembered the boss would be there too. He had hoped for a one-on-one with Kylie. He'd been surprised when he first saw her at the shop, working on the ancient paintings. He'd expected someone much older, but Kylie was stunning and dedicated. She could sit there for hours, completely absorbed in her work. This was what his grandfather hoped he could manage. It was impressive, and she was a sight for sore eyes compared to the overdone looks he'd seen elsewhere. Liam's phone chirped, and he snatched it up with a smirk. "You're kidding, right? I've got this kick-ass Renaissance landscape that's been touched up so good you'd think it's fresh off the easel. Just scored it a couple of days back." He paused, nodding. "Auction, yeah. What? He wants that," he continued. Kylie, within earshot, put two and two together. That had to be the painting she'd handed over. Liam's face clouded over. "It's not about the dough. I've already made a pact with the auction house. But hey, I'm working on two more Renaissance gems. How about I swing by that gentleman once they're polished up?" After a beat, it seemed like he got the thumbs up. As he ended the call, Liam turned to Kylie with a gleam in his eye. "Kylie, what if I threw some extra green your way? Could you swing by earlier or hang around later to get this job done quickly? These Renaissance joints are flying off the walls." Kylie shot back without missing a beat. "What's the raise look like?" She was okay with it as long as the money was enough. "30K, Liam replied, his tone confident. He'd seen her magic with the paintbrush, and it was the real deal. He was already picturing how to get her a gig at the auction house once these masterpieces were finished. Kylie pondered it for a hot second and then gave a nod. Kevin wanted to butt in, but the echo of his granddad's warning kept him zipped up. Samuel stormed in, his face a thundercloud after hearing Julie's account of the call with Kylie. He smashed his water glass down on the table, the water spilling out in a splash. He shouted, "Great, she's still denying using the card I gave her. I'll have my assistant track the charges right now. Who does she think she's dealing with? And she's skipping out on the hospital, leaving Mel hanging. She's a tangle of lies and I'm done with her." Julie was nursing a headache that had been there since yesterday. "No clue where she's been. Not at Amanda's place. If she gets into trouble and people find out she's one of ours, we'll be the talk of the town. I'll give her a ring, make her come home and make amends," Austin said, his face a mask of cold fury. He'd never taken a liking to Kylie, his country-bred sister who couldn't win their parents over like Melanie. "It's my fault, really. Please don't be angry," Melanie said, her voice barely above a whisper, her head hanging low. Julie's heart broke for her. "It's not on you, honey. It's all Kylie's mess." Austin had Kylie's number in his phone, but he'd never used it. The call went through instantly. He didn't give Kylie a chance to speak, diving straight into lecturing mode. He said, "Kylie, get your act together and apologize to everyone back home. We're family and we can work through this." Kylie was caught in gridlock, the world outside her car window a cacophony of honking. Austin's scolding on the phone was the tipping point. "You're insane," Kylie grumbled before ending the call. She wasn't the type to lose her temper, but the Lampard family's high-handedness was too much. The words echoed through the speakerphone and an icy silence fell. Austin's expression soured even more. What kind of discipline did she have growing up? Look at the language. So unrefined. It's just unbearable. Julie muttered, her head in her hands. Samuel and Austin shared a look, their faces clouded with anger. Everyone was on edge, except for Melanie, who was secretly relishing the drama. The interruption of Samuel's phone was a surprise. He answered it. Mr. Lampard, I've looked into it. Your secondary card hasn't been used at all, the assistant said. Samuel was shocked. What are you saying? The assistant repeated the information, thinking there might have been a miscommunication. Samuel was in disbelief. You sure about the card number? There's no way it's clean. The news had Julie and Austin exchanging worried glances, while Melanie's heart sank, realizing she'd forgotten to stop Samuel from checking the credit card. Samuel's assistant gave the news after a double check. Mr. Lampard, the card is spotless. No recent charges at all. The call wrapped up and Samuel was left in awkward silence facing Julie, Austin, and Melanie. Melanie, with a sudden spark of curiosity, said, maybe our sister's been using her boyfriend's cash all this time. Like Craig. Julie scoffed. That guy with the 9 to 5. Melanie, trying to keep her own connection to Craig on the down low, nodded. Yeah, she mentioned he gives her his paycheck. I have his number. Let me see if they've moved in together. Austin rolled his eyes, using a guy's money and now living together. She's gonna tarnish our family's reputation. Melanie dialed Craig's number, her voice casual. Mr. Fraley, just between us, have you been paying for everything for my sister? Craig was caught off guard but played along. Yeah, usually. Why do you ask? Has she ever talked about paying you back? Melanie smiled. We don't keep score. I just gave her $300 from my company bonus. She said it was for something important, Craig lied smoothly. Melanie was pleased and put her phone on speaker, making sure her family could hear. So, is she staying at your place now? Craig paused, considering his words. He'd been looking for Kylie, but no one seemed to know where she'd gone. He figured. Melanie had an angle for this call. He knew which side his bread was buttered on. Melanie was the family's favorite. So he lied again. She was with me until yesterday, but when I didn't give her more cash, she got upset and left. Any idea where she might be? After hanging up, Melanie looked at her family with a mix of satisfaction and concern. Kylie's always asking her boyfriend for money. It's really worrisome. Samuel's anger was palpable. Disgraceful. He slammed his hand on the table, the water glass flying off and shattering against the wall. Kylie slipped her phone into her pocket as she headed toward Trendy Mall's underground parking lot. Traffic had been a mess, but it gave her a chance to hit the supermarket. She was about to step out of her car when she remembered the task she'd agreed to for Zack earlier. Flipping open her phone, she scanned through the photos he'd sent. The jade pendant in the fourth photo is the one, she texted back. Just as she was about to enter the supermarket, her phone rang. Trevor's name flashed on the screen. Where are you? He asked, his voice all business. At the supermarket in Trendy Mall, Kylie answered, already reaching for a shopping cart. Wait for me, Trevor commanded before the call ended abruptly. Kylie stood there for a moment, a little bewildered. Was he close? It suddenly dawned on her the Trendy Mall was just a stone's throw from the Walters Group building, a major landmark in Jardora. Kylie was already making a dent in the snack aisle, tossing bags of chips and a mix of treats into her cart. Ever since her accident, she'd been craving these little comforts. Back then, she'd been too penny-wise to splurge on such luxuries. Now, she was all about making up for lost time, even planning to bring some back for Horde. They had a thing for these snacks during their TV binges. Among the shoppers, when he finally spotted Kylie, his face looked like it could give an ice sculpture a run for its money, it was that cold. His usual aloofness had turned into something arctic. Kylie, engrossed in her snack quest, only noticed Trevor when she looked up from her cart. He seemed a bit grumpy. Is there something you need, Mr. Walters? She asked. His eyes were as frosty as a winter breeze. Are you done shopping? Not quite. Want anything? They've got a new flavor of chips here. Interested? Kylie's question was more of a polite gesture. Trevor didn't even bother to look at the chips, his voice as cold as his gaze. I don't do junk food. Isn't this from the food company under the Walters Group? You're not a fan of a little self-deprecation. Kylie sneered. She was easygoing, but that didn't mean she was going to take the heat for someone else's bad day. If someone had upset him, he should deal with them. Why was he giving her the cold shoulder? For the past 2 days, she had been considerate of Noreen's feelings, even when she noticed his offhand attitude. She had given him plenty of leeway. Trevor's expression darkened, his gaze sharp as a blade. As a powerful man, his stare could make anyone tremble. Kylie had seen her fair share of tough times, but under Trevor's stern gaze, her heart still skipped a beat. Grandma asked us to go to the auction house together. She's got her eye on a piece of jewelry she wants us to bid on, Trevor said coldly. If it weren't for Noreen's request, he wouldn't have considered bringing her along. It was just a piece of jewelry, he could have handled it himself. Kylie had beautiful eyes that sparkled when she smiled, crescent-shaped and gentle. But when she wasn't smiling and showed a hint of anger, she resembled a beast ready to fight its fate, instantly giving the impression that she had been dealt a raw hand. It stirred a desire to cherish her, but that thought was quickly extinguished. To him, she was not only cunning but also adept at deception. "All right," Kylie agreed, seeing no reason to refuse Noreen's request. "Your clothes won't do." Trevor's cold gaze revealed his disapproval. He checked his watch and said, "The auction starts at 7 tonight. It's not even 5 yet. There's time to get ready. I'll have Zack take you somewhere. I'll meet you at the auction house." "Sure, I'll check out and then load up my car. Have Zack wait for me at the parking lot exit," Kylie said, pushing her cart to the checkout. Trevor stood there, his icy gaze sweeping over the chips on the shelf. His product. Zack was ready to show for Kylie, but she'd already driven herself there. So he navigated to her location. When he got to the parking lot's exit, he slid into her tiny electric car. His long legs made the compact interior feel even more snug. He raised an eyebrow. "Mrs. Walters, your husband's got a garage full of cars. Why didn't you take one of those?" Kylie smiled. "This one's better for the planet." What she kept to herself was that her marriage to Trevor was more of a contract than a commitment. They weren't really a couple, and she wouldn't use his stuff. Kylie stepped into the styling studio with Zack, and it was like they had the place to themselves. She threw on a black dress that the stylist had picked out, and at first, it was just a dress. But after the hair and makeup crew did their thing, Kylie stared at herself in the mirror, not recognizing the woman who looked back. The dress was classy, with a back that showed just the right amount of skin, making her look like $1,000,000. Zack walked out of the restroom and froze. He'd always known Kylie was gorgeous, but in that dress, she was the kind of beautiful that could stop traffic. He quickly collected himself and got her out of there. On the way, Zack was the driver, focusing on getting them to their next stop. Pulling into the auction house parking lot in their not-so-luxury ride, Kylie and Zack were met with a guard who clearly didn't think their car was up to snuff. "Sorry, but this lot is for special events only," he said, his tone saying he wasn't sorry at all, like they'd stumbled into a country club by accident. But when he saw a luxury car getting closer, he went to butter the owner up. All smile. Kylie, in the passenger seat, raised an eyebrow, a small smile playing on her lips. Zack, who was with her, was used to this kind of discrimination, but it was a new one to experience while he was in the company car. His face went from 0 to frostbite in seconds. "You don't recognize me." The guard had been too busy looking down his nose to make eye contact. He'd seen plenty of people trying to sneak a peek at the high life. But when he finally looked at Zack, he realized he'd messed up. Zack was a regular with the Walters Group's CEO, and the staff was trained to know the city's heavy hitters. "Zack?" "Good catch," Zack said, his voice cold. "I'll be talking to your supervisor." The guard turned pale, nodding so fast he was a blur. "It's just so busy tonight, we're being extra careful." "My mistake, sir, for not recognizing you right away." Zack just gave a humorless laugh and drove on into the lot. Kylie watched the whole thing go down with a mix of amusement and indifference. Snobs like that were a dime a dozen. The Lampard family was just the tip of the iceberg when it came to people looking down their noses at others. Kylie showed up, meeting Trevor soon. He was his usual put-together self, but he had this way of looking at her that made her feel like he was calculating the distance to the moon. When he saw her, his gaze got stuck on her like a skip in a vinyl record. She floated towards him, all done up in a dress that made her look like she'd stepped out of a classic Hollywood movie. The way she moved was like walking on air. Trevor's eyes went all deep and dark, like he was trying to solve a puzzle. Her dress was too sexy. "How does that stay up?" he sneered to himself. But as she got closer, she could see Trevor's face was more of a storm cloud than a welcome sign. Was he thinking her dress was too much? She loved it and thought it was perfect for the night's big event. "Is there an issue?" Kylie asked, her voice as smooth as silk but with a hint of steel. Trevor's eyebrows pinched together, just a little, which on him was the equivalent of a full-on eye roll. "You'll definitely get some looks in that dress tonight." Kylie shrugged, not bothered in the slightest. "If I get looks, it's because the stylist you found is a genius. This dress and the makeup are spot on." Zack, who was hanging around, looked like he'd just seen a ghost. He was probably thinking that Kylie wasn't trying to catch Trevor's eye with her outfit. If she was, she'd be tripping over herself to smooth things over, right? But there she was, owning her style like it was her personal runway. At the auction house, the energy was palpable as people shuffled into their seats. Melanie and Samuel grabbed spots in the back, keeping a low profile. The place was packed with the buzz that the items up for bid were something special. It was a chance to see and be seen, even if they didn't leave with any new treasures. Samuel had snagged an invite through a friend of a friend, a chance to rub shoulders with the bigwigs. The Lampard family had a solid business back in Jardora, but they were far from the high society here. He was looking to change that. Melanie had caught wind of her dad's plans and had sweet-talked her way into coming along. She had her own reasons for being there, too, hoping to spot Trevor, the guy who'd caught her eye. The men were all in their Sunday best, and from her spot in the back, Melanie couldn't get a good look at the front. "Dad, remember you said the Walters Group gave us that contract? The one that's gonna take our company to the next level. If Mr. Walters is here, maybe we could get a word in with him," Melanie asked, her voice hopeful. Samuel nodded, his eyes gleaming with the prospect. "If the stars align, I'd love to." He paused, then added with a knowing smile, "You know, Mr. Walters is still single. You've always been a star, Mel. If you could get to know him today, well, you get where I'm going with this, right?" Melanie got the hint, her cheeks flushing as she looked away. "Dad, I get it. Mel, you're a chip off the old block, sharp as a tack." Samuel praised her, his pride evident. Suddenly, he froze, his gaze fixed on something up front. "What's up, Dad?" Melanie asked, noticing her father's sudden surprise. Samuel was staring at a couple in the front row. The man was Trevor, and the woman next to him had a silhouette that was eerily familiar, resembling Kylie. "Trevor's got a date, and she looks a lot like Kylie," Samuel said, his voice trailing off. "A date?" Melanie's curiosity piqued as she followed her father's gaze. There was Trevor, his presence commanding attention in his suit. But it was the woman beside him that caught Melanie's eye, wearing a gown that Melanie had admired but could never afford. The dress accentuated the woman's figure, and her exposed back was stunning, her skin turning heads. From behind, she bore a striking resemblance to Kylie. Melanie's eyes narrowed as she took in the other woman's curves. The flashy getup was a dead giveaway she was fishing for Trevor's attention. And those clothes? Total fakes. "Dad, she's no Kylie. Our Kylie wouldn't be caught dead in something so desperate," Melanie said with a smirk. Samuel shook his head. "You've got a point. They're worlds apart." Meanwhile, Kylie was clueless about the Lampards lurking nearby. As the auctioneer's voice droned on, she found herself nodding off. The constant hustle was catching up with her, and she couldn't shake the feeling that her frequent blood donations were taking their toll. "What's Noreen got her heart set on?" Kylie asked, stifling a yawn. "A diamond ring," Trevor said, his voice as smooth as velvet. Trevor's gaze lingered on Kylie. Even sitting down, he towered over her. Her dress was doing things that shouldn't be legal, but it felt off. Out of the corner of his eye, he spotted some dude eyeballing Kylie, his look a little too hungry. Trevor's jaw tightened, and he shot the guy a look that could freeze lava. The guy got the message, his eyes widening as he realized who was sitting next to Kylie. He felt a pang of disappointment. It wasn't every day you found a woman who could make your heart skip a beat, but this one was clearly off limits. Trevor, the lone wolf, never had a woman by his side. If she was just a +1 for the night, Trevor wouldn't be throwing daggers with his eyes. The auctioneer's voice droned on about some old painting, but Kylie was all ears. Liam had really hustled to get it here. She couldn't help but wonder how much her old artwork would go for now. Trevor noticed Kylie's eyes glued to the painting. It reminded him of that suitcase she'd brought to Starlit Villa, with a rolled-up canvas on top. Was she into these old masterpieces? He nudged her, voice low. "Digging the painting?" Kylie shook her head, "Nope." Trevor raised an eyebrow. If she wasn't into it, why was she staring so hard? She was totally playing it cool. Samuel squinted at the painting, a puzzled look on his face. "I swear I've seen this somewhere before. Old paintings can look alike, but yeah, this one's hitting a chord," Melanie said, her gaze lingering on the artwork. She suddenly thought, it's like that piece back home. You know, the one Kylie gave Mom, the one she never really paid attention to. "No way," Melanie shook her head, brushing off the idea. That painting Kylie had, it was probably some cheap knockoff from a site like Wish, couldn't have been more than $10. "No way it's the same as one that's in an auction." "What's no way?" Samuel asked, intrigued. "2. Nothing. Dad, look at this," Melanie said, her voice filled with disbelief. "This painting is now up to $300,000. Samuel wasn't an art buff, but a thought struck him. "It's just like that painting we had hanging in the corner back home. $1,000,000. Trevor suddenly called out, raising the bid. Kylie's head whipped towards Trevor. "You like this painting?" She had sold it for a measly $150,000, and now Trevor had driven the price up to $1 million. This artist's work had never been auctioned for more than $600,000 before. If he liked antique paintings, she would have sold hers to him directly. Not for much. If he bid 600,000, she could have delivered it to his door and even offered 3 years of maintenance. It hurt to think about. Just okay, Trevor said, his gaze meeting Kylie's surprised eyes, a slight smirk playing on his lips. Since she seemed quite interested in the painting, he'd buy it for her. He didn't like being in anyone's debt, and she had indeed made his grandmother very happy these past few days. Ally million, another bidder raised the stakes. It seemed they truly loved the painting. As Trevor was about to raise his hand to bid again, Kylie stopped him. Her voice was a soft whisper. If you're into this style of antique painting, for a million, you could buy 2 paintings, and I can find them for you, guaranteed authentic. You just need to pay a commission. Trevor stared at the woman, his eyes flickering with 1,000 thoughts. L.I million going once. 1.1 million going twice. L.1 million, sold. After the deal was closed, Kylie watched as the painting was taken away, thinking that Liam had made a killing today. For both Ber and Liam, it was a win-win situation. Mel, doesn't the painting Kylie gave to your mom look exactly like this one? Samuel asked, shocked by the final price. Melanie was somewhat absent-minded, her gaze greedily fixed on Trevor. He likes antique paintings, she wondered. Hearing Samuel's question, she curled her lips and said, Dad, the painting Kylie gave to Mom does look similar to this one, but I think she probably bought a replica online. A replica? Really can't be displayed on the big stage. Samuel now couldn't help but feel disgusted whenever he thought of Kylie. The auction was the talk of the town tonight, with a lineup of 8 items that had everyone's attention. But it was the grand finale that had hearts racing, the ethereal star diamond ring. This wasn't just a piece of jewelry, it was a legend, once gracing the finger of a foreign duchess. The moment the news hit the streets, it was like a siren call to the wealthy and the wild at heart. The starting bid was a staggering 6 million. Bids flew back and forth like lightning. 10 million, someone shouted. 13 million. Another voice chimed in. Then Trevor stepped in, his bid like a thunderclap. 30 million, he declared, his voice carrying across the room. Kylie, at his side, felt her jaw drop. It was like he was playing with Monopoly money, but this was the real deal. The room hushed. No one was willing to match that kind of wealth. The auctioneer's gavel fell, and just like that, the ring was sold for a mind-blowing 30 million. Melanie, from her spot in the crowd, was wondered. Lost in a daydream. What would it be like to slip that ring on my finger, she continued, but who is Trevor planning to surprise with such a lavish gift? The woman by his side. It seems far-fetched. Trevor isn't the type to be tied down, so the lady in the stunning dress is likely just a guest for the night's festivities. Trevor and Kylie were heading out of the auction when Samuel Lampard seized the moment. He knew chances to chat with Trevor didn't pop up every day. Melanie, let's go catch up with Trevor, he said. Sure thing. Melanie replied, getting to her feet and giving her dress a quick tug to fix it. She had a swagger in her step, knowing she looked good. Kylie was about to follow when the room spun around her. She wobbled, but Trevor's quick reflexes kept her on her feet. Trevor had suspected Kylie of faking a wobble just to get into his arms, but her pale complexion and the beads of sweat on her forehead told a different story. She was clearly under the weather. I'm not doing great, Kylie murmured, her voice shaky. Could you take me back to Starlit Villa? I don't want to worry Noreen, and I'd hate to give her my cold. With a nonchalant nod, Trevor shed his suit jacket and wrapped it around her. He then steered her toward the exit, his pace brisk and his hand a comforting presence on her shoulder. Samuel and Mel had a tough time navigating the crowd, only to find themselves just short of reaching Trevor as he whisked Kylie away. They made a move to follow but were halted by the event staff. Mr. Walters has already left through the VIP route, they were told, a mix of politeness and finality in their tone. The Lampard duo was left in an awkward standstill, their faces a picture of embarrassment. They were so close, yet so far. Kylie was half asleep in the car, hearing Trevor's arrangement about everything, her head tilted against the window, the city's lights blurring outside. Trevor, sitting beside her, noticed the quiet tears rolling down her cheek, her expression a mix of sadness and something else he couldn't place. She seemed so small in that moment, a stark contrast to the confident woman he'd seen earlier. Trevor's curiosity was piqued. What had upset her? A lover's tiff, maybe. The idea that she might have said yes to him out of spite or hurt nagged at him. He didn't voice his thoughts, though. Instead, he turned to the driver and urged, "Step on it, would you?" His tone was firm, a clear signal that he wasn't in the mood for delays. After a quick checkup at Starlit Villa, the family doctor confirmed Kylie had a common cold and handed her some meds to kick the fever. As the doc headed out, Trevor, loosening his tie, stepped over to Kylie's bed. He aimed the thermometer at her forehead. Wow, she was burning up. "Kylie, your medicine is ready." Trevor said, his voice gentle. Kylie was out of it, only half listening. The word medicine triggered a flashback. Craig and Melanie had once slipped her something when they were all over each other, and it had been pure hell. The heat, the helplessness, the mental mess, it hit her like a ton of bricks. I can't, she whispered, her voice rough as sandpaper. Her eyes were shut tight, and tears were silent rivers down her cheeks. Trevor's mouth tightened at the sight. He was about to make her take the meds when his grandma called. How's my girl doing? You better be looking after her, right? Noreen scolded through the phone. Kylie's family now need to treat her like gold, especially when she's under the weather. And you? Hearing his grandma's stern voice, Trevor's expression turned even more serious. She's got a fever, but I'm taking care of her. There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end. A fever? That doesn't sound good. You better wrap up that call and get back to my girl. Trevor hung up the phone, his eyes meeting Kylie's. She was curled up tight, her face flushed with fever, tears silently trailing down her cheeks. It was a sight that tugged at the heartstrings. He adjusted his tie, his tone firm. Kylie, your fever's spiking. You really need to take some meds for it. The word meds seemed to hit a nerve. Kylie's teeth clenched and she muttered through gritted teeth, Craig, I hate you. The mention of Craig's name, coupled with the tears on her face, told Trevor all he needed to know about what was going on. Her lip was bitten so hard it was on the verge of breaking. Trevor's brow furrowed, his voice stern. Kylie, pull yourself together. The pain from her lips seemed to snap her out of it, but she was still clearly in distress, her head throbbing, her body weak. Her eyes met Trevor's, the fog of her feverish state lifting. Kylie's voice trembled as she reached out. Thanks, is that the medicine? Hand it over. With a concerned look, Trevor passed her the pills and a glass of water. After taking the medicine, Kylie murmured her thanks. Once I'm off this fever, I'll be as good as new. You should get some rest, Mr. Walters. Trevor's voice was a mix of concern and command. You sure you don't need help? Kylie nodded, a small smile playing on her lips. Positive. It's just a cold, nothing I can't handle. Seeing Kylie's determination, Trevor thought back to her earlier vulnerability. Was she trying to prove her strength to him? With that in mind, and his suspicions about her motives, Trevor gave a brief nod and exited Kylie's room, leaving her to rest. Kylie lay back down after Trevor's departure, but the Sandman wasn't having it. That dream had been so real, like a flashback. Past life, and now she was wide awake. Or maybe it was the meds. Either way, she felt weak but not as miserable as before. Her phone buzzed and seeing Ethan's name, she answered, Hey, Ethan. Kylie, you sound wiped out. Are you sick? Ethan's voice carried a hint of worry. He'd seen her through every sniffle and sneeze since she was little. Her eyes were a bit red, likely from her illness. She missed her family something fierce. It's just a bug, I'll be fine after some sleep. Where are you staying? I'm free, I can come take care of you, Ethan offered, not liking the idea of Kylie alone in some rental. I've got a roommate who's looking out for me. You don't need to worry, she reassured him, still unsure how to break the news about her sudden marriage. Ethan relaxed a bit. All right, but if you need anything, just say the word. Oh, and Kylie, what's this about you and Craig? I ended things with him. Did he reach out to you? Kylie's lips were dry from the fever, and the pain from her dream seemed to resurface. He just called, wanting to know where you were. I never trusted him. Something about him has been off lately, Ethan said. Kylie couldn't believe even her brother had seen through Craig when she'd been so blind. She replied with a touch of irony, yeah, guess so. Ethan, check this out. This paper looks just like yours, a voice in the background interrupted. Kylie's concern was palpable. Ethan, is everything okay?